connector to the old building, and we do know that it's okay if the connector is more modern.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
So it's okay?
Yeah, a slider would be okay. I think you can
Sliders, they're fine.
choose that. I don't think we have a strong preference either way for that. If the
It's such
slider
a
fits
modest
your, yeah.
part of it.
I think if that suits your design, that would be okay. Because it's in the back, right? And that's part of the reason. Yeah, that's part of the reason it's,
So, it's a little easier as a charcoal barbecue. Move in and out of one building with this sliding door as opposed to
point taken. Yes, okay.
historically, there were no gas grills.
Or sliding glass doors.
The 19th century grills, the 19th century Webers were always charcoal. But they didn't have sliders then, so
Oh, my gosh.
a challenge for that
Right,
era.
right. Okay. I think the slider's okay. Does anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Greenfield?
Yeah, I mean, I know, Chip, you said that, and this is why I think Kathy was asking about this, is how we see this in its totality. So this addition is at its highest point 21 feet, I think.
I think that's right,
approximately,
yes.
21 feet, 3 inches. The connector is 14 feet, so that's much lower. You know, you're saying it's not really, it's not looming over
It's
the,
very
Essence
modest,
scale is consistent.
I'm going to assume is taller than 21.
much taller, yes,
It's longer than the main house
Right.
by a lot.
because it doesn't have an attic, obviously.
Mm.
The main house is only about 22 square feet.
I remember looking at this house in the past,
I mean,
like
I
2019 or
visit
something.
My wife's daughters were having babies. In fact, I remember a little bit nostalgically when she was hoping one of them would. But as of this year, there were 5.
Wow.
And selfishly, I thought we needed another treasurer
I think that makes sense. 5 more people.
for the
Yeah.
older man in the house.
Yeah.
To get away from the 5 little ones? No.
You kids either shut up or go to the playroom.
And then just a question about the small building that is proposed to be demolished. I think in the guidelines, it states something about we
Yeah.
need to review that.
Right.
So was that existing, that structure, when you purchased the
It was
property?
existing. I pointed out to Chip when he came by that each of the outbuildings on the property were all shingled in there, asbestos shingling.
Oh, boy.
So we removed all of that, including what was on the roofs, and replaced it all with cedar. So it looks like a historic building. When we bought the property, it was a dirt floor covered in like very, very old plywood,
This one?
that one.
Okay.
So
Well,
at that time, it sort of looked like a tear down. When you go inside it, you wouldn't marvel at like, oh my God, this needs to be moved to a historic site.
There's 2 other,
It's really,
it's maybe from the 1950s or something like that. I mean,
yeah.
at this point, that's historic, but that's,
Right. I mean, yeah,
just wondering if you want to donate it to somebody instead of
I brought
demolish
that up. It sits right on the floor, so
Yeah.
there's nothing really to
Oh, you couldn't
pick
really
up.
move
It's-
it,
there's- Yeah, the wood goes right down to
joists,
the base.
yeah.
He has 2 lovely older historic buildings behind this.
Right.
One's a pool house and one's another shed. So
Okay.
the property is well populated with historic outbuildings. I mean,
right. We just have to take it into consideration because it's, excuse me, it's going to be demolished, and that's one of the areas that we have jurisdiction over, so we need to assess that and ask these questions. So I don't have any particular problem with it. I mean, if somebody wanted to get it, I think that'd be nice, but it doesn't seem like it's easy to move if there are no floor joists. It would just,
Do you think free or best offer?
Yes.
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 Somebody-
possibly.
but you
yeah.
got to get it out the driveway and under the
Yeah.
wires and everything.
Well, that's up to somebody else to do. But anyway, it looks like a nice old building, but I don't think it's,
You can free cycle it.
yeah, you can put it on Bionic Free Cycle.
Well, I do want to say, you know.
Maybe you should go back to the-
we made it nice looking. It basically had no
Could you just go
floor.
back to the podium, because that way could you go back to the podium, please? Because that way everybody who's tuning in, because we're so fascinating, will be able to hear what you're saying.
And, but more so you are.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, sorry. I mean, we'd be more than happy to donate that building.
Okay.
I don't think it has a parent, even when you look inside it, that it has any obvious historic bases. It was pretty much slapped together, and we had to do some additional plywood on the sides so the bugs would stop what they were doing. And I was mentioning to Chip yesterday, as I began, thinking of all the possible problems that could emerge at this important hearing, important to us. And that is, driving along Main Street in East Hampton a couple of days ago, looking at the historic buildings, you could see that something built in the 1700s, there was the addition that came in the 1800s behind it with, the slightly different roof line. So if we flash forward to when my youngest granddaughter is my age, it'll be 2098. And we should wish her a happy 75th right now, because I may not be here, there's a chance. But, the thing that we're building is, I think, consistent with the architecture of the era in which the original house was built, and will look seamless almost as soon as the paint dries. So I'm not sure what else.
Okay.
It's a win-win.
Say.
Yeah,
Do you have any, Diane, do you have any other comments, questions?
no, I think that everything is, you're very agreeable, and I think you're respectful to all the things that are important to us.
Thank you. We're having more trouble getting the county to help us out with the septic system upgrade.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But with regard to the small details here, which are important, of course, but will we need to come back and show you that we now have the lighting on the plans? Would you like to see
Well, I
that?
think we could condition the approval on that. We can make approvals and there are conditions so that it gives you time to make that happen. I would appreciate a rendering of what the house would look like from the street. So even if it seems like there's 4 feet that are possibly, is that what you said? 4 feet that's visible from the street, just so we're,
Well, it will be visible because it's highly planted on the side. I mean,
okay.
It
but
will or it won't?
it won't.
Whatever the
it is you want.
proposal is, if you could just put that in, so that way we're kind of checking all our own boxes, because it's, historic property in a historic district in Amagansett on the main street, and
Now, that illustration you're referring to, should it take into consideration the hedge that would basically block the view of that?
No, just the front facade with these little 4-foot bump outs what you'd see with no vegetation looking at the house.
right,
Yeah,
right.
that's possible.
Yeah, that would be best, because,
Helpful.
right, and
So-
so when you, is someone
Just for
talking?
Frank.
Yeah, sorry to
hi,
interrupt.
Frank.
I want to chime in here about the drawings that you may be mentioning. So I just want to differentiate. I assume when you're rendering, you mean an architectural elevation,
Elevation.
not like a 3D rendering.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, please, thank you
So
for that
the
clarification.
other thing I'd say is, I think for the building department, you're going to need elevations of the house that includes the entire house, not just the addition.
Right,
So
that's correct.
my suggestion was typically, I think I'm fine with this, but typically I would want to see elevations that you would submit to the building department, and I would be surprised if the building department does not require showing the existing house with the addition, like the side elevation showing the entire elevation. So it would be the front of the house. The most critical to me are the front of the house and the 2 side elevations, or particularly I guess it would
Right.
be the 1 side elevation showing that clearly but that shows the relative roof heights of the existing and the proposed. I would also suggest, because you're going to need this on the building permit anyway, or the architectural drawings for the permit anyway, you need to indicate what the roof height is
Right.
above existing grade. So the architect would know this.
So do you have, Frank, would you be willing to approve this conditionally, or would you prefer to wait to see those renderings?
I think given the scale of this, I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with it. It seems like this is,
Okay.
given its, I realize part of this is seen from the street, but given its scale relative to the existing house, it does seem pretty benign.
Okay. Esperanza, did you have anything further
I, not to hold you up, but I would prefer to see it first, but
before we approve it?
yes.
I mean, we're going to,
Historically, so it would feel
Like, when were you
appropriate to do
planning
that.
on
Well,
starting
why don't
construction?
I mean, I think what we could do is if you can get those into us, we'll get you right on the next agenda, because it'll be an addendum. I don't anticipate that it'll be problematic for us when we see it. But I think Esperanza makes a good point that we should,
Do you know when the next meeting would be or whatever?
not off the top of my head, but we can.
30th,
I think it's the 30th of November.
Of November?
And then complete record with what we need, and when we receive it, we can.
I would just say you're going to need those anyway for the building department. So even if we didn't request it and you took our resolution, your architect is going to have to
You'd have do
make
that
further
anyhow.
edits anyway, so might as well do them now, get it clean. And I do think, I kind of agree with Esperanza for just,
Yeah.
given that it's a historic property and this is kind of protocol of what we would expect, that I think we would probably ask this of most applicants anyway, to come back and just say,
Yeah.
give us the full elevations and give us the
Yeah,
exterior
tidy those
lighting.
administrative pieces up. Yeah, I think that's a good.
No, I understand your thinking, and
Okay.
I appreciate it. So when we do the elevations, at the same time, we'll put the lighting,
Yes, put the lighting on, yeah,
windows,
Yep.
and
all
the
three.
window,
keep
yeah.
the sliding door. I'll add a grill to the deck. Is there anything else, do you think?
No, I think that's it.
I'll put it in a letter
I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would actually just make sure that your drawings do not get encumbered by landscape, like don't put in hedges
That's right.
that hide the architecture.
That's
So just leave the landscape off of it.
nice.
We will do that.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, number 3, Ocean Colony and Tennis Club. This is changed to commercial, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-130-2-7.4. Chip, this is you again. I see Lori's here.
Sure, so this is an application to alter the color of the capping on a very large and very long, it's actually 410 linear feet long, retaining wall now under construction. And there are the masons yesterday building the retaining wall. Ocean Colony is a very large short-term rental complex just past the restaurant Lunch on the Topeka Strip. The work is on the oceanfront units, buildings 1700 and 1800, where there is a big change in grade between the parking areas, which are sort of flat to 27, and the first floors of these buildings, which there you see they sit 6, 8, 10 feet above the grade of the land. Applicant is building the wall with Cambridge Sigma 8 block in the toffee onyx color, which we approved at our November 10th, 2022 meeting. Applicant is requesting to change the color of just the capstone blocks from the approved coffee onyx color to a coal color, which is close to black. Here is the sample of the toffee onyx block that they were building yesterday. They are 8-inch large blocks. The masons on site did not have the capstones yet because thankfully it hasn't been approved in the different color. The change in color, essentially creating a two-tone wall, will bring more attention to this massive wall, which is 410 linear feet long and looks to be 6, 8, 10 foot high in different places. But capstones are often different colors and different materials than the walls that they cap. Lori, maybe you could fill us in on whatever I've missed.
Nothing, actually. It's changing the color of the capstone to coal, which is sort of a spinoff of the onyx. There's a gradation there. So you've got your toffee onyx, you can see the black in
Yeah,
that
this is,
toffee.
this is grayer than we actually would have guessed.
When you turn it from this angle, actually turn it around, because it actually looks like toffee.
Yeah.
So what is, it's not the gray, it's the brown one?
It's going to be this.
That's the black capping.
Dark, they're proposed, this is what they're putting in
No,
for
I
the
understand,
wall.
but she seems
It
to be
looks like
saying
installed.
that
That's your
it's
toffee onyx.
the toffee onyx is that, and it's
Right,
going
but
to
that-
be darker.
No,
But the
no.
toffee onyx is the
capping.
wall. The capping is being changed from toffee onyx to coal.
Oh, I see, it was,
It's a different color. It was
the same
approved at
before.
this,
I
and-
It's going to be
understand.
one color,
It's all going to
monotone.
be one color. And what we see in the photo is
That,
an
Understood.
example of this. This is a,
Okay.
piece of it now, but
Right.
they're changing it to this darker color, coal.
Laura,
Yeah.
the reason they're changing it is they just prefer a different color?
Yes.
Okay.
The board is involved in these decisions.
Yeah, I'm sure. So this is, a good quarter mile off Route 27. No one's ever going to see this wall except the people who live there, so it's not like it's visible to anyone else. It will attract attention to the wall, but it's a big wall to start with.
Oh, right.
The variated toffee onyx actually gives it a softer feeling than it would be if it was a solid color.
Oh, we don't have any problem with this. We approve this, yeah. It's just the different color for the capping.
So we don't have a sample
It's
of,
only going to be visible by,
Do you have a sample of the coal?
no, but we submitted photos.
Yeah, we have those.
Okay, so the photos are what I just showed you. That's okay, we got them, Laura, you don't have to, we have those. I thought there might be an
but are they
actual
in the
sample.
digital file?
They
so
hadn't
that-
ordered
I don't know,
it yet.
Dan, do you have this in the digital file? Can you pull that up, please? Oh my, there's that sideways thing.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's this.
It's okay.
It was part of the application.
Oh, okay, 1 second. We should have hit the bottom.
Oh,
You submitted this time around?
Look, received.
No, I trust you. I just don't seem to have it in here.
I liked the monotone because I felt like it blended in more to the beach scene, instead of having a more urban
Yeah, what is the
flavor.
reason for the contrast?
The board wants it differently, yeah, they just want it different. So this is a modification to that approval that it was almost a year ago, believe it or not, but I think part of the reason we liked the original is because it had those sandy tones to it, it was more of
Blended
a.
in, yeah.
Yeah,
blended
it's a little
in.
more mimetic.
It's
than-
about the same color as the buildings.
Click on date modified.
Right, but this black cap,
So
or
it's
coal
modification,
cap,
there's nothing
which
in
isn't
there?
black, but it's very dark
That's all it
gray.
is. Just that, no. I don't have that last page.
It's kind of the gray that's the onyx in the toffee onyx, I think.
I'm sorry?
It's gray, it's more gray than black in these photographs.
It matches more this gray that is in the
Correct.
toffee onyx, you're
Yep.
saying.
We don't have the digital picture.
Okay. So this is what we have, this is what was submitted, and we can, so Diane can take a look. Yeah, I've seen it, that's okay, I think.
We're good. I have one.
Frank hasn't seen it, but there's nothing we can do. for
Kind of
him.
like mixed, I could go either way.
Yeah, okay, well, let's see what everybody else says.
It's their house, it's their complex.
Don't seem to have it.
A little more formal.
Yeah, it looks very nice.
Well, I'm not saying that's a good thing, I'm just saying it's more formal.
Frank, did you have any comments on this?
You can't see it.
I can't see it, but
Oh, who?
I mean,
Okay.
kind of I leave the judgment up to you all in terms of
Okay,
this color, and I'm very cognizant of this fact that this is where its location and not visible from any public street.
not a public
So,
access, right?
not, and it's not visible from the beach either, right? So
Yeah.
I do think that's a strong consideration to take into account here.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? Diane, did you?
No,
ask Rhonda?
I think it's
Okay.
really clear. It's fine.
So I make a motion to approve this application, changing the capstone to coal as submitted.
Okay, may I have a second, please?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you. Go, thank you. All right, next up is SHM Star Island. doors and windows. We have two applications from this same applicant tonight. Suffolk Tax Act number 300-6-4-9. I see Mr. DeSuno is here. This one's mine. The first one is to change doors and windows. I think Dan, if you can just pull up the application, please, because I think the application, which I thank you for the completeness of your application. It makes it so much easier for us to do our job.
Pleasure.
But as a former ARB member, he gets it, so. Anyway, this is to change out some doors and windows, actually change doors and windows to, change some windows to doors and make a door into a window.
Right.
Yeah. So, on the restaurant, it's on the northeast wing, I guess, of the restaurant,
Yes.
describing that correctly. Now, what's different here, and you'll see, Dan, could you just enlarge that upper left-hand corner with the photos, please? This shows the, what we're looking at. Now, this property would normally be requiring a natural resources special permit or an NRSP for any kind of demolition work and an expansion of the use. But in this instance, and it's my understanding, and oh gosh, what did I do with my little note on that? Well, I spoke with Brian Frank of the Planning Department, who does most of our natural resources special permits. That's the venue of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And he and Ann Glennon had been developing a policy, which is not a specific piece in the code, but that would indicate that as long as the rough opening is not widened, which I guess would reflect the amount of demolition that had to be done for the renovation to occur, that it would not require an NRSP. And so I think this fits that criteria. You and I talked about this a couple days ago, but I, asked at the planning department too, and I discussed it with John this morning. So I think that this application, we can review it, basically, is the long way of saying. It doesn't require an NRSP, but just in case anybody's following this and is thinking, wait a minute, this property usually requires an NRSP, we don't need it for this particular project. So the proposal is to take an existing door on the east-facing side and make it a window and put in new folding doors where the windows are. There's an existing door to remain, and then there are two sets of windows that are going to become folding doors. They will match the folding doors that we approved on the restaurant a couple of months ago, right? Whenever it was.
Yes.
Like, I think it was this
Year.
past summer. Was it a year? Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, time flies and we're having fun. So anyway, I think this is fine. I think this is this is what we approved the last time. Dan, do you have this picture? Yeah. Yeah, can you show that, please? And this is the kind of door that will be put in place. Where the plans showed it earlier. So does anybody have any questions? Mr. DeSuno, would you like to add anything?
No, the only one that might be unclear is there's if you go to the proposed, the new folding door right there. Is currently a single door, but it's a pocket door, so that's why the header is wider than the opening.
I see. All right, so the header would be supporting a door of that
So
width
the
anyway.
framing doesn't change.
Okay,
But the opening size doesn't change essentially, but there is the portions of the wall that hide the hole that the door slides into.
yeah,
is-
okay.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of confused by this elevation on the left, and well, both of them compared to the photograph we were just looking at. What is this structure
This is the exterior, and that's that awning that,
So the awning is taken away in that
no,
picture?
no,
awning's
no, we're just looking through it. We're looking at it from the beach.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
From the photograph that you were just showing. I'm
Well, the
very-
photograph was from the interior of the,
And an older
your
photograph.
photograph.
That,
Didn't you-
that photograph was before the.
That photograph is without
That
the awning.
exterior photograph was before the trellis was put on.
Understood.
Right.
Okay, and then you don't have a photograph
No,
from, okay,
no.
I see. That's why I'm confused.
Yeah.
Okay. Partly. And then this, from the interior, that door is going to be turned into just, the door and the window are just going to become one window or two windows?
The door and the window in the interior photo will be 3 panels of a
those
folding door.
folding doors like like on the other,
This will be folding doors also.
The 3 windows
on the
that face the water will be folding, 3 panels of folding doors. And the double door and single window will be 3 panels of a folding door. They'll be the same.
Okay, because I thought you said that the window was going to be, forget it.
one door is going
That's,
to be, yeah, okay,
that's behind us on the interior
right,
photo.
right. One door was going to be replaced, become a window.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So, does anybody have any questions about this from Mr. DeSuno or me?
Nope.
Diane?
No, I think
Frank?
it's pretty clear.
Sorry, to be,
I'm fine with this. No objection.
which door is becoming a window?
It's on the east side there.
All the way in the corner.
That?
That one,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Frank, what did you say?
He's okay.
He's okay?
I have no objection to this.
He has no objections. Great, that's excellent. Well, then I'd like to make a motion to approve, sorry, did you have
No,
something?
no,
more?
no,
Okay.
got it.
Hey, we've got the black memo. I just realized you got a black check one. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this submission as proposed. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Frank. All right, so we're on to 4, SHM, Star Island Siding, Suffolk County Tax Net number 300-6-4-9. If you could bring up the photos on this, Dan, that would be helpful. This is the continued upgrading of the siding on this. It's, a big resort. We've looked at this. We recently, I don't know, I guess it's a year ago now, I can't, feels like it was more recent than that, approved clear siding, clear cedar siding. These are the proposed areas that still need the siding and the roof shingles. They've been in the process of re-siding and shingling the property. And these are the areas that need to be done. It's something in the neighborhood of 445 linear feet, I
Linear
think,
feet
yeah.
wall, yeah.
So it's a lot. But you can see down in the left-hand corner, that's the cedar. We recently approved that, and in these various pictures, you'll see shingles that are going to be replaced by the cedar. It will unify the look. I think it looks nice. That's really it. Do you want to look at those
No,
pictures? Okay.
it's fine. Thank
All
you.
right. Did you have anything you'd like to add, Mr. DeSuno?
I think you covered it.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions for me or the applicant?
No.
No.
I will just add one thing. I did drive by this about a month ago, and I think the siding, it looks great. I really like how this is coming along, and I think I'm quite pleased with it. So
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it looks fantastic. It's very, very pretty. Okay.
Very much.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept this application as proposed. You have a second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Opposed? All right, thanks a lot, Chris. Happy Veterans Day. All right, now, item 6, Suffolk County Tax Net number 300-118-1-11.2. It's for a deer fence. Frank, this is yours.
Okay.
Is Mr., it's Trevor. Hi, Mr. Darrell, welcome. Good to see you.
Good afternoon.
Okay. So here's
Okay.
Frank's photos, great.
Yeah, so this is an application for fencing, for 8-foot deer fencing on a residential lot in the Northwest Woods. Most houses on Jonathan Drive most houses on the street are sited similar to this one, with the houses set about middle of the lot. Most lots you can see, they're fairly wooded, but you can see through to the rear. The applicant is requesting to add deer fencing approximately from the front line of the house to the rear lot line is depicted on the survey. And let's go through the photographs here. I'll just explain this. So that's from, obviously, the street is the approach. And we can talk about where the deer fencing will go approximately, I think, to about the right corner is seen. Keep going through these photos. That's the view from the street. Most houses are like this sited. This is the area that is being proposed to be enclosed by deer fencing. Keep going. This existing pool fencing would be removed. There's a pool gate to the left. There is existing stockade fencing on the rear lot line. Keep going. And on this fencing, there are these like extensions above this that bring it to, I measured this one at about 8'4". Trevor, I'll let you answer this when we get to you, but I don't know whether that portion of that fence is this neighbor's, like, is this their fence that's going above it? But be prepared to answer that. Keep going. That's looking back from the corner of, again, the pool fencing. The proposed fencing would enclose that basketball court. Keep going. Looking back, there's the pool, the rear, obviously. Keep going. Now, there is there another? This is, okay, so there is a backstop to this basketball court with netting and these poles. These poles, I wasn't able to measure them. They're like at least 12, if not 15 or 18 feet.
Oh, boy.
So we can talk about that as a board. Can we bring up the survey?
Yeah.
Great. So the green is the proposed deer fence. It's my understanding that it's very faint to see, but you can see the light gray where it says existing fence to be removed. I give credit to the surveyor. This is a very clear survey. So this is, I don't know if the rear stockade fence would be replaced. So I think maybe Trevor can explain a little more of the proposal here.
That sounds great. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Frank. Members of the board. So as Frank just pointed out, this is an application for deer fencing for the back sort of 40-ish% of the parcel. And as you can see from the photos, it does sort of enclose the usable space, for lack of a better term, the cleared area of the parcel. The remainder of it is to remain in that wooded, vegetated area. And the playing court was just recently installed with a building permit, but we haven't closed out that permit yet pending this application because we'd like to do the fence install as part of the final closing out of the C of O. So to Frank's point, just going sort of in reverse, the basketball playing court does have that protective net just to keep the balls from flying into, where mom may be sitting in by the pool. But those posts are not the permanent structures. They can come up and down, but it was warm until a week or so ago. So, and that netting is limited just to those two posts. It doesn't run around the perimeter of the property, but it's literally just for keeping the basketballs on the court. And happy to have any sort of limitation that it comes down and goes up when they're using it and come back. I don't think that's going to be a problem for the applicant at all. With regards to the rear fence, you can see on the survey that red dotted line is the fence I think that Frank was pointing to on the back side of the stockade. So that existing, I don't want to call it a deer fence, but the limitations of those risers on there are not ours. That's on the back side of the stockade fence. And as for leaving the stockade, I believe that is proposed to remain stockade. The deer fencing would be interior of that on our side.
So they have two fences.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. So let's be clear on the survey, the purple whose fence is the purple?
That's the neighbors.
So the
Can you
neighbor's
put the-
fence is
put the
on,
cursor on that for us, Dan, so we can follow along? Thank you.
So it comes in, yeah, 0.6.
It's kind
inches
of
and
off your
3
property a
inches.
little bit, right? That's
so
the
it's off the
neighbors-
property,
That's the neighbors?
but as it goes near the pool, the neighbor's fence is actually in their property.
Okay, I see.
So
Okay.
technically, it is, I mean, it's a 6-foot stockade fence, it's as a right, but it's not, it's sort of like on one property and another, so I'm not,
Right, and you can see where it ties into both of their properties. It turns the corner, it runs down their two neighbors' boundary line. They both sort of
Oh,
in their own fences were running
so there are two neighbors on that,
on the back.
I see, okay. I mean, we can't really approve a fence that's not on the property though, right? I mean, but we don't need to, the 6-foot,
exactly, it's as a right.
okay, okay.
The deer fence is what we're seeking permission for will be
Is the
on.
deer fence
Our
that's
property.
going to abut the existing fence?
Right.
Okay.
Which is not theirs.
I mean, one initial
And
comment
for
here,
title purposes, because I actually did the closing when they purchased, anything less than 12 inches is not a cloud on title. So we generally don't.
Oh, I see, okay. All right,
that are
for
less than a
that,
foot out of
it's,
possession, because
okay.
it's not raising any title exceptions.
Ah,
That's sort of
okay.
the,
That's good to know, actually, yeah, yeah. It's good to
back
know,
portion
because
of
we,
that, so.
we, haven't-
Contractor's allowance.
yeah, right.
So just to be clear, so that stockade fence, it's installed though as if it were this applicant's because it's the,
Yeah, the
ugly side. and-
back side.
as permissible fencing for pool, because it's,
Right, no, I understand. I'm saying the neighbor installed it incorrectly.
yeah, I think
Okay.
there's no, been no.
Yeah,
It made it confusing, yeah.
Yeah.
right.
And I'm sure if, as part of this application, if the board says they want it moved, I'm sure they'll have it moved to the property line as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not inclined to make them go to great lengths if it's legally not considered to be a,
It's not a
you
bar
know,
as far
an
as the town
issue.
is concerned.
Right, that's good, because
If
that's,
the fence was on the other side, we could not use it,
right,
pool fencing.
ah,
Under the
Correct.
town code, our pool fence has to be on our
on
property.
your property.
No matter
Right,
if it's their fence on our
Gotcha.
property. They couldn't use it for their pool fence.
Right.
Is
yeah,
that,
yeah. Oh, boy.
Very helpful.
It is, it's very helpful indeed. Okay.
one reaction I have to this, oh, sorry, I apologize, I'm doing it remotely and it's not as easy to communicate with you all, but a couple of points. One is, generally speaking, I've seen this board not look very favorably of putting one fence next to the other, particularly if both fences are on one lot, are on the same lot. In other words, what's being proposed here is an 8-foot stockade fence in front of an 8-foot deer fence in front of a 6-foot stockade fence, both on the property line, regardless of who owns it. So to me, so that's one question. I assume that on the left side here, the reason it jogs in from in back of the playing court is for what is that because you don't want to encroach on the vegetated area.
correct, we're trying to remain within sort of the already existing cleared area.
Okay.
They're not looking to cut down trees or clear out other existing vegetated area. It's already sort of the designated line.
Okay. Another question is on the right side. Why does the applicant feel that they need the 8-foot fence to go all the way up to almost the driveway? Like why couldn't, let's say, the fence, I just don't know what they're planning to, why that's important to them. I can understand, it's another discussion the board should talk about is whether an 8-foot deer fence is applicable for this lot. But I understand it's being used as a pool fence, but to me, that area to the right of the deck, I just don't know, from the rear of the house to the driveway.
Sure. So
I don't know, it seems like a lot.
no, so the answer is currently, as you can't really see in the gray, but hopefully you can see it in actual surveys that you have in your files, the existing fence that's already there that's proposed to be removed is what they're dealing with, and sort of the deck, and the whole concept is that they're proposing to enclose the area where they use it in the summertime. So by proposing the deer fence to be at the front of the house, it's incorporating the area of the deck, which is where they would be living and using, because, and what I didn't have a chance to get to yet, but basically to the south, to the west, and to the north of this lot are huge unencumbered areas owned by the town and preserves. So there's 14 acres slightly to the north, 6 to the south, and 3 to the east. And those are huge deer population areas, which is great. And we actually have a little preserve next to us, which is 0.25 of an acre, and just slightly south of it as well. So the deer do traverse this area quite a lot. So the goal here is to use or incorporate as much of the habitable living space that they use in their yard without the deer and the ticks. That's so they're trying to get as much area, which is the deck area. That's why they're pushing it or proposing to push it further towards the street. If the board said, no, we want to see it further back, they would rather have some than none, for sure, but.
Yeah, we have problems with 8 feet in the front yard. That's the issue, really, you know.
But I also think it's commendable that it's, so much of the property is not fenced.
I agree.
Right, there's no other fencing on the whole front side, it's open to,
Right.
it does allow the animals to traverse the area.
What is the distance from the property line to where the fencing would start in the quote-unquote front yard? I mean, it's,
Sure, we're about,
Well, I think we can extrapolate probably 100 feet. It's 82 feet
So I
from the
think
front of
it
the house. It's
also
100 feet.
meets that.
Yeah, it
Meets that,
meets that setback
setback
criteria.
criteria.
Yeah, okay, all right. Does anybody else have any other questions for Frank or the applicant? Okay, do you want to make a motion, Frank?
Well, I want to ask how the board feels about something about, I mean, if you're asking me to make a motion to approve this, there are a couple of things that are, one in
please,
particular,
yes.
the rear lot line. So they're asking for a 8-foot deer fence in front of a 6-foot stockade fence, both on the same lot. I would prefer to see just one fence. You know,
I kind of agree, Frank. It's a,
You know.
double fences just creates unsightly burdens.
the question is, what about the additional? I mean, as Trevor knows, you can't go above 8 feet anyway. This is like a little more than 8.
right,
The question is whether this board would be fine with a 6-foot stockade fence in 2 feet above a stockade fence. I don't see that much as a precedence. I see kind of either or.
So you're suggesting that they add 2 feet to the stockade fence rather than put
No,
in
'cause
the
right-
deer fence?
Right now, there already is 2'4". The existing rear fence is already 6 feet stockade with 2 feet 4 inches or 2 to
Right,
2 feet
no, I
4 inches
understand that.
above.
So
So
are you
I'm not-
proposing they just leave that? I'm not following what your suggestion is.
I'm curious what the rest of the board thinks of this. Personally, I don't like the 6-foot fence with a topper on top of it.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So I kind of think, I'd be fine with a 6-foot stockade fence. I mean, it's as of right, but I'm kind of not willing to my own vote. I don't feel comfortable going above adding on to a 6-foot stockade fence, even if it's just wire and a post. But that's my vote.
So you don't want to put the deer fence in the back where the stockade fence is?
Correct. I would just say, if they're going to keep the existing fence in the backyard, that there's no 8-foot deer fence on the rear lot line. That would be my vote, my preference.
Okay,
Because I also think we're being, somewhat generous about this, letting the 8-foot fence go to the front of the deck there, almost to the driveway.
okay. Does everybody understand that? Can you just review that one more time, Frank?
So essentially, I would propose, and again, I would like to hear what other board members think about this, but what I'm saying is approving what's proposed here with the exception of the 8-foot deer fence running along the rear lot line. So everything but the one running on the north lot line.
Okay, but that would leave in place the present stockade fence with the wire extension, right?
No, so a 6-foot stockade. So basically only building as of right.
So removing that wire extension from the 6-foot fence?
Well, that's a building inspector thing. That's a
Well, yeah, but
a
we're
CO
approving the fence,
inspection.
right.
So
They can do 6
essentially
feet as
there's
of right, but beyond that, we have jurisdiction, so I think,
Right, we're here seeking permission for the deer would jump to 6 feet.
Yeah, I think that's
Right.
going to
We need the
negate.
additional 2 feet.
no, I'm
and
just
any-
trying to clarify what
Yeah.
Frank's proposal is, so that we can discuss it and then possibly vote on it. But what I'm not clear on is, so you're proposing that they just keep the 6-foot stockade fence and eliminate the 2 feet of wire that they've installed to bring it to 8 feet?
No, I am saying that the resolution would call for the proposed deer fence along the, let's see, I believe it's the east, the south, and the west elevations. There would be no, there would be nothing in a resolution saying a 6-foot stockade fence only, because that's as of right. What would be a resolution would state what we're giving permission that's not as of right. So I'm
Right.
saying,
Which is?
which is, the resolution is to not to say, take down
He
your
just wants
fence.
to eliminate, you want to eliminate that fence.
That's not part of the resolution. I'm saying,
Okay.
it can't stay a resolution to take down the fence because it's not conforming right now. So does that make sense?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. So you want to approve this and eliminate that part of the fencing from what we're approving, correct?
Yeah. Listen, this is my only vote, and I'm really curious what
No,
other
but I think
people.
it makes sense. No,
have to say.
I just don't think we understood until now what your
Okay.
proposal was, that's all. So that's helpful. So Frank is saying he doesn't, if I'm understanding correctly, you don't have any problem with every other element of this except for that stockade fencing with the extra wire on the deer and where they're proposing to put in deer fencing, and you would like to eliminate that from the proposal. Is that
I
correct?
guess maybe I'll make this clear. First, there are two things. One is I only want to see one fence on the rear lot line.
Right.
If the applicant wants to have an 8-foot deer fence on the rear lot line only, I tell you they don't want to, because for privacy purposes, they want the stockade fence. So only one fence, and if that fence is going to be something, the owner, presumably, Trevor could answer this, they're not going to want to see the stockade fence taken down. My preference would be to say, that's your limit. If you're going to have a stockade fence, 6 feet.
Okay. I
you
get
know.
it now. Okay.
But Frank, with all this 8-foot deer fencing on the sides, you're really inviting the deer to jump over the stockade fence. So it's not, the whole point of this fencing then becomes sort of moot.
There are plenty of other, it just seems to me that most other people in the town, listen, I'm not a deer scientist, but my understanding of it is if a deer cannot see through, I have 6-foot stockade fencing, I've never had one jump. And I shouldn't probably be using my own house as an example, but we have plenty of deer coming through our property. Not once in 10 years has a deer jumped it. My understanding is if a deer cannot see over the fence, they're not going to jump it. That's why they jump over a 4-foot fence, but they're not going to jump over a 6-foot stockade fence. Now, I'm willing to be told that's wrong, but I just, that's why an 8-foot clear fence has to be, that's why a clear fence needs to be 8 feet to keep out the deer.
Okay.
Again, I'm not
Yeah, okay, we got it.
an
Yep,
expert on
thank you.
deer
That's
behavior.
good, that's
It's
good.
up to your client to decide, I guess, what they
Yeah,
want to do
I
here.
think that.
Just ever so slightly confused again, only because I thought that the stockade fencing belonged to the neighbor.
Correct. That was what I
So
was gonna
why
say.
are we
So-
even discussing the stockade fencing?
What I can submit to you is that if, understanding Frank's position, I think my clients would allow me to, if the board were to approve the 3 sides, even though there's more than that, and let me not have the deer fencing on the rear, then I could reach out to the neighbors,
Work something out.
what they're doing with their fence, because the extensions are not ours. So
No, then why are we,
then come back to the
Extensions of
board
the neighbors.
to seek permission
Yeah.
for that rear line.
Okay.
If we're
Yeah, I
unable
think that's a good idea. Let's
convert
do that.
rear fence to be relocated to the proper locations. if
Do you-
that's
Are you
an
good with that, Frank? Does that satisfy
Sure.
you?
I mean, listen, if
good.
it's off
Okay.
the property line, I actually didn't like climb over the fence to see if those extensions are actually an 8-foot fence that are, is it attached to the fence? I couldn't see because it was on the other side of the fence.
Right. All right, so do you want to make a motion?
Well, how does everybody else feel?
Are we good with that? Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I agree with you.
yes.
Okay. Okay, I think we're good. So just make a motion and we'll do that, right?
Okay.
Yeah, let me just confirm this, what I'm calling out, which are the
Okay.
east, west. I guess we can call them the front yard facing the street and the side yards. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the application as presented, except but not approving I'm sorry about this, exclusive of the
northerly line.
northerly rear proposed deer fence.
Okay, that sounds good. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I think we've got part of it done. Thank you. Thanks,
Now,
Frank.
does
Thanks, Trevor.
that require resubmission of a survey, or is that a building department
I
thing?
don't know, let him talk to the people
Okay.
and they'll make a proposal. I mean, I think we all know what the problems are there, so like, you at least get started on 3/4 of it, right? Okay.
Thank you.
And Trevor, you said the basketball tent, the basketball stop that's like 15 feet is going to be taken care of?
Yeah, we'll have it where it's,
I think we'd like it, yeah, I think that would be preferable. We don't want it there all, catching snow, right?
no,
And-
understood.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure they
Okay.
don't, what they just, cost of installation, I'm sure they're going to want to protect it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. All right, item number 7, 90 Beach Lane, Suffolk County Tax Act number 300-200-2-28.7. Esperanza, this is yours. I know this is Britton's, but I don't see, oh, hi.
Hi.
How are you? Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Anthony Pasca. I'm here with Beth Baldwin of my firm. We're the attorneys for the applicants, and with us are Alex Greenwood, who is the architect for the project. He's been in front of you a couple of times before. And new to the team is Dan Thorpe from LaGuardia Design Group.
Okay.
He's also here to present some information.
Okay.
If it's okay with you, since it's been a year since we've been here last, I'd like to just recap where we left off and then ask.
Happy to have you do that, but our process is for the member to make their presentation, and then we'll take comments from the applicant, okay? Okay, so thanks for introducing yourself. I'm glad to know what your plans are, and we'll just let Ms. Bronza start, and then we'll happily take any comments or presentations you'd like to make.
Well, in fact, I'll be brief because I will definitely hand it over to you. But really, what I will say is that the last time that this application was before us, the residence that's proposed had been relocated, I believe, 30 feet deeper into the parcel, and the gross floor area had been reduced 882 square feet. So that was the I think that was the last time. And the application itself was originally, give me a moment, for a residence at 10,249 square feet and a height of 30 feet 8 inches. So our letter to you had indicated, I think still, a desire to see a reduction in the mass and scale of the building. And what we've received now this year is a proposal for a whole lot of landscape to mitigate the impact of the structure. So we can go through the presentation, this booklet, I think, but I think that's probably the best thing, and you
Yeah,
can then.
That'd be great.
if that's, I think that's the right, I was going to get us to that point and then suggest that if you let Mr. Thorpe go through his booklet, because one of the other things you asked for was some more information, like an aerial that was scaled to show
Right,
the
yes, I was looking for
irons,
that.
and
Yep.
and he did include that. Let him go through his presentation, and then I'll get back to the big question about the size issue, which we did not reduce the size, but I would like to talk about that some more with you both. Okay?
Okay, great, thank you.
I need to interject. As per the previous application, previous time you met, I need to recuse myself from this application.
Oh, okay, all right, thanks, Frank, I didn't realize that, okay.
Good evening, Daniel Thorpe, landscape architect with LaGuardia Design Group.
Hi.
Hi. So my firm was brought onto the project to do a little research and analysis for the team of the local context around the property. So as you flip through the booklet, this is a good page here where we took some up-to-date aerial photography and documented the surrounding buildings, the surrounding neighboring structures as they relate to our site. In red, highlighted in red, you can see our project site there. You can keep, I guess the point of this slide was to show kind of the scale of our proposal.
Can you just go back to that
Relative
slide,
to the
Dan, while he's
surrounding
talking about it,
buildings.
please?
Yeah. So the point of this slide was to show the scale of our proposed building relative to the surrounding structures. You can see to the south, there's multiple larger buildings that exist today. And
Okay.
we thought this was, a good picture of that. So the next slide, we kind of zero in on the site itself, and it's exploratory of the existing vegetation that exists on the site, perimeter. A lot of focus is placed on the perimeter vegetation. There are large existing hedges, not only along Beach Lane, but along both adjacent neighboring lots, as well as some large mature trees, London plane and cherry trees that exist on the site. The next slide. This is more of like a digital document showing, the existing survey and highlighting the perimeter screening and a little more of a technical graphic, but you can keep rolling. All right, so these view shed points 1 through 5, we took either from eye level camera or using aerial photography. So as we flip through these are kind of before and after shots of the surrounding view shed into the property. So the first is from Beach Lane. What we've done is we've haloed in the proposed building and then labeled the existing vegetation in white. So there's an existing 12-foot-high privet hedge that's equally as deep along Beach Lane, and a slightly lower privet hedge that returns down the driveway. The next slide shows a proposal to increase the density of the existing vegetation, more in keeping with the volume of the existing vegetation that occurs to the east and west, north and south of our site. We can keep going. This is a view kind of looking north from Beach Lane. Again, the building's dashed in white. They're very tall existing cedar and I believe black pine trees along the southern border that we've highlighted there. And our proposal would be to supplement those with more eastern red cedars and similar evergreens to continue to kind of screen that piece of the proposed building. And if you keep just rolling through. What we also wanted to do, because you, up until now, up until this presentation, hadn't seen a 3D model of the proposed building. And so what we've done, my office modeled the building to scale, and then we placed it into up-to-date, a current drone aerial so that you could see how the building fits in with the surrounding context. So that's the proposed building with some of our proposed landscape elements. All of the proposed additions to the screening along Beach Lane and up the adjacent corridors are labeled. And then also our proposal to maintain any of the existing meadows or convert any of the existing lawn areas to native meadows. Even the proposed parking on the Beach Lane side of the barn building would be grass pave parking and not asphalt, blacktop or gravel. Going through the next slide. This is probably the most impacted neighbor to the south. This shows, basically from eye level of their property looking towards our proposed building, what the existing vegetation on their side looks like, and our proposal to add to that. The next slide shows how we'll add additional evergreens to shield the building, which is more in keeping with what this property has on its southern border, shielding them from that rather large neighbor. So we're trying to kind of work off of and almost echo the existing vegetation that exists along Beach Lane and up and down these property boundaries. The next slide. From the northern side looking down, it's very densely vegetated. There wouldn't be almost any impact. And then this is the proposed plan. Lawn is limited to just walkways through meadow. All of the parking in the front would be grass paved, as I mentioned before, and then a large buffer of additional evergreen planting along Beach Lane, which again, more consistent with what exists up on the northern lot. And then this is a 3D view showing the proposed building kind of in situ in the meadow. We've proposed a few large shade trees that are the same species as what's existing on our site, but also on the adjacent neighboring properties, London Plain, the London Plain trees. That's the proposed grass pave with like a grass ramp up to the building. Next slide. And then this is, looking from the west back to the building. Again, proposing shade trees that are the same species as what's there today. The client's excited about the idea of introducing a pollinator meadow, which is great for the environment, much better than fertilized, irrigated grass lawn. So that would be the approach to vegetate the balance of the
I
property.
mean, it's essentially what's there.
Yeah.
It's a pollinator meadow.
Yeah.
It's full of life there right now.
Yeah. So instead of replacing that with parking lot and lawn, we're trying to build off of that. And then this was a comparison showing, maybe Tony can speak more closely to this, but the residence being proposed at the 135-foot setback versus the next slide, which shows if they built if the residence was proposed at the legal 50-foot setback, and we've turned off the vegetation so that you can see the two. So the first slide shows it's the current proposal. The second slide shows what I guess legally could be built up to the principal setback line. The next slide, almost through it. So this is some of our past work showing what a pollinator kind of native grassy meadow can look like. And the next slide shows some the grass pave alternatives to gravel and blacktop parking. So that was our contribution to the project.
Okay,
And thank you for
thank you.
Thank you.
walking through that.
Could we go back for a moment to page 15? And, before I even get into, this is it's a very screened out property. So it already is that, and I know that even already there's been a hedge added to the front property line. And I counted, the majority of the properties on Beach Lane have vegetation.
Yeah.
I don't deny, but I would say it's predominantly very open yards. And this is one of a handful of properties that is really blocked off.
Shielded. Yeah.
But I wanted to look at page 15 because it was pointed out to us by our planner, and I wanted to ask you how you were addressing this. It would seem from this proposed site plan
Yep.
that there is an existing emergency vehicle turnaround, which would not exist anymore.
Yeah.
And were that to be the case, this would have to go to site plan review.
Right. I can let Tony speak to that as well, but I don't believe that existing emergency turnaround that's labeled on the site plan is actually existing. I think that is that's an undeveloped turnaround. It's an unimproved
Well, there has to
turnaround.
be that emergency
Right.
vehicle turnaround on the property, so that's why I assume, and I don't know if it's
Okay, yeah,
on
so
the-
that would have to
on
be
the
made,
survey.
that would have to be made part of the site plan.
Right, but we wouldn't be able to approve anything until that
The,
goes through
yeah.
site plan, is what I'm saying.
The part, what she's saying is that the ARB cannot approve a change to the site plan. That's not our purview. You have to go before the planning board to do that. And it's our understanding that this was part of the original map that was drawn when the property was subdivided, and that turnaround exists on that map. So if it, I get that you might want to change it, but we can't do that, so.
I believe over that turnaround, and I'm not 100% sure, but
Right.
I'm gonna make a little bit of an educated guess here, because this is how the property was developed and permitted, because it does provide some additional access for, the way it's designed as an integrated two properties together. If the building department, because I think it's really the question of emergency access and whether there are some already existing turnarounds here. So when the planning board approved it in the first instance, it's approved with a turnaround in that spot. But in subsequent years, the actual way that the circulation on the property was developed was a little bit different. If we're required to, when we go for a building permit, to provide a different form of access, we will do it. But I disagree with you that this is part of your purview, because we're not asking you to do anything with respect to
With
the
all due-
buildings
yeah.
back there.
No, I've said quite plainly, it is not our purview.
Okay?
we cannot do that. We
We're
don't.
not, and we're not asking you to.
Yeah, I understand, but we also, our protocol here has been to not approve applications that require site plan approval from the planning board until they receive that approval from the planning board. So, I mean, this can be researched, I'm not saying it's impossible to move forward in this iteration, but it needs to be explored, and that's not something we can resolve tonight.
Okay, we've been at this for a couple of years now, this is the first time this is being brought up to us.
Well, it may be the first time we had a chance to look through the covenants and restrictions on this thing, so.
Have you been
know.
through those?
I've seen them.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the.
None of this is insurmountable, this is not.
No,
we-
I couldn't agree
as you know,
more.
our clients control both parcels, so if there are
They're
any
aware.
adjustments that need to be made, it's easy.
That's great, but it's not an adjustment this board can oversee or approve. We don't have, we do not have purview. We
nor
are
are we
in
asking you
agreement
to.
that we do not have purview on that.
Right, and we're not asking you to. We're
No,
not-
I know you're not asking us to, but what I'm also trying to explain is that because we don't have purview, we can't really act on this application until that issue is decided. And if it's irrelevant, that's great, we'll go forward, but if it needs site plan approval, then we'll wait for the planning
I
board
tell
to.
you what, I'll disagree with you up
Okay.
until the point of the end of this meeting, and then you're going to take advice from your lawyer. So as to what happens next, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think I'll state my position is that your jurisdiction's over buildings, not site plans, and we're not asking you to approve anything relating to the back of the property at all, which is where this turnaround is.
Right.
But
Wording the, right?
Yeah, I'm confused. I'm saying to you, I know we don't have jurisdiction over that. You understand that, I understand that, right?
but you're
But what
saying-
I'm saying is it's the process and protocol of this board not to act on applications that need site plan approval because we cannot provide that approval.
except, I'll point out, no building inspector has made a determination that this does need site plan approval. That's what I'm saying. is
Okay, well, that-
Somebody on your side has told you that may be the case, but no one has told us that, nor has the building inspector who
Okay,
has
and
jurisdiction over
that's-
this
I-
said that. So,
That's fine, and we can consult the building inspector.
okay.
But,
So-
I'm happy to proceed with whatever process will resolve this issue, but it's not something we can resolve tonight, and I'm just letting you know that.
But you'll continue to listen to the rest
Of
of the.
course, yes, yeah, no, I'm not shutting you down, I'm just
Okay.
saying, this is a sticking point, and giving you the information so you know what's going on here, but please continue.
I have a question. What is an emergency vehicle turnaround? What does that mean?
It's usually for
It's for like
access for the
ambulance,
fire
fire.
department.
But this is a U-shaped driveway, so
But it's not, it's part of the site plan. This is the
it's
map.
pre-existing, it
Yes,
was on here,
exactly.
even
It's
though the
map.
site has been developed very
Correct.
differently.
It's the map that was approved as part of the site plan.
Okay,
And
okay.
it's historic. It's like
It's from the past, but it's
Correct.
there.
So we just need to, that needs to be remedied in some way. If it's okay to just say, look at the access is here or whatever else.
Got it.
But we can't determine
I
that.
got it.
Okay, so, okay to return back to the
Please
big
do,
question?
yes.
Okay. So the other issue that you, of course, asked us to look at was the size of the building, and we did go back to the clients about this, and programmatically, this is the minimum requirements for the building and the usable space inside of it. What we looked at was, is there anything about this building that we could do within the requirements of the family that could reduce its mass and scale, which is what the buzzwords that you asked us to look at. And what we really came to is that there's no excess with this design. This is literally the most economical design to achieve the usable space for the family without having any excess massing. And what I mean by that is that you think about any house, any other house, if you pull up the sort of overview that had the houses in the background on it, it was page 10. Every other traditional house that's built has excess mass that doesn't get factored into the usable space. It has roofed over porches that don't count towards GFA. It has chimneys. It has garages, attached garages. It has sometimes dormers that take up mass but don't contribute to the actual usable space. Our building, as you see, doesn't have a single roofed over porch, no decks, no chimneys, no dormers, no excess that allowed us to say, can we trim and cut this back in a way while still preserving the program that the clients need for this property to make it useful? And we really could not find that. And so that's the first thing I wanted to point out to you. The second is that we also looked at all the objective metrics that we could to see where we fit in the grand scheme of things. And when you talk about, from an architectural review standpoint, mass and scale, in the architectural guideline portion of the zoning code, none of that's really defined. But within the zoning code, there are quite a few metrics and objective measures for helping regulate and determine mass and scale. And I want to point out where we fit in on all those things. The number one metric that's really used for controlling mass and scale, which is used in pretty much every zoning code, certainly on Long Island, but probably throughout New York State, is coverage, building coverage. And that is the key, sort of the traditional way of keeping a limited footprint, which in turn, going up, keeps your mass and scale down. And the coverage that's allowed on this property is just under 8,400 square feet, or 15%, whichever is less. We're proposing a coverage of 5,991 square feet, which is only 7.3% of the lot area. And that's it. We don't have any other buildings that we're proposing for this, so it's the one building at 7.3% of the lot area, which is substantially under what would be permissible. The next measure for controlling mass and scale is setbacks. And for this size property, one unique thing about the way that the town of East Hampton does setbacks is by doing it based on the size of a lot as opposed to just based on a district alone. And we have a 50-foot minimum front yard setback and 40-foot minimum front yard setback and 20-foot side yard setbacks. And we have proposed 135-foot front yard setback, which is more than 3 times the minimum. And we've proposed 53.3 foot and 57.1 foot side yard setbacks, which is way over 2 times the size of the minimum side yard setback requirement. So again, it's another way of regulating mass and scale, and we're way ahead of the game on that one, and we're not pushing the limit at all. That sort of controls the horizontal, that's the traditional horizontal way of controlling mass and scale. East Hampton also has a pyramid law and a height limit, which controls the vertical portion of that. And because we're so far set back, we're not even in the world of the pyramid regulations, that we're not even close to that. So we're well under the pyramid, and we're allowed to have a 32-foot ridge height with a pitched roof like this, and we're at 30.8 feet. So it's within that metric also. And the last one is gross floor area, and that's perhaps the newest. Zoning tools, that and pyramid laws are traditionally the newest of the uses. And we're under the permitted GFA as far as the town code's concerned, which is also done on a sliding scale basis based on lot size. So again, there's the zoning code creating a scale for properties and an objective one so that we don't have to guess, is this something that's permissible? Where we have some double height areas, so about 2,000 square feet of our GFA is attributable to double height sections, but it counts against us, and that's part of our total. And we're still under the limit, including that. To put it in a little bit of a relationship to something else, and this gets back to the point I was making about the excess. I know you guys went through the 104 Wainscott Main process, and that resulted in an approved house. The GFA for that approved house was around 12,000 square feet. It's technically on the same block as our property, same ag overlay district as our property, same district as our property, same zoning district. But in addition to their 12,000 square feet of GFA, if you add up all the roofed over porches, the attached garage, the detached garage, the carport, you get another 6,000 square feet of floor area, which turns into mass and scale that we don't include in our program because we're trying to keep this as economical and minimal as possible while still achieving the needs. So compare our 9,400 square feet to about 18,000 square feet on that property within the same agricultural overlay district. We think that that's at least a precedent that you should be considering. So given all of those objective standards, we don't think it's appropriate to sort of superimpose on that some nebulous subjective requirement that you still have to do more. You still have to make it smaller because we think you should. We do acknowledge that your code talks about harmony of this property in relationship to adjacent parcels and open space. We don't have any adjacent open space. So we're within the ag overlay district, but we are not a parcel that is in between a road and an open space. Behind our parcel is another house. It's controlled by the same family, but it's another house. And on each side of our property is our other houses, some of which, as you can see to the south, are quite large, have sprawling designs, have pool houses, have dormers and chimneys. And off of this particular picture, but to the north, is a 3-story house, just adjacent to our property to the north. That is considered a 3-story house. And it's quite long. It's sort of a lengthwise mass along Beach Lane. So all around us, in relation, if you want to look at that particular criteria of what is the harmony of this proposal, this building compared to the buildings that are around us, with the one exception of the narrow lot that's to the south of us, everything else is, these are large parcels and large buildings. So with respect to that portion of the criteria, we think we have met, and your code requires us to give reasonable consideration to all these things, and we think we've given reasonable consideration to that.
Could you refresh us the purpose of this building? What is
It's residence.
It's a residence or
residence.
or a storage barn?
I think it's both. I think there are 2 apartments in it, and it's primarily a barn on the first floor and a residence on the second floor.
That's a fair way to put it. That's a fair way to put it. But it's going to be a legal residence. I mean, that's the principal use that's allowed on this property. So the principal use is going to be a legal residence, but obviously it's a barn, and it is being designed in large part for the storage ability of this barn.
So I see on the booklet you provided us, the barn builder is the New Jersey Barn Company Historic Preservation Specialist. So this is a new barn or a barn that's being moved from another
it's new.
site? It's all new. So there's nothing historic preservation about the barn company that's building it. It's a new build.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's the firm, and they've done a lot of work for this family because if you know the properties and there are several
everyone
historic
knows the
buildings
properties.
on this property. And so it's of concern to the family to have a
Compatible building. Okay.
exactly. And that was the goal of this, is not just mean, our property is one of the adjacent properties, and so when you consider the harmony of and compatibility of a building in relation to its adjacent properties, our clients were just as concerned about that as anybody else, that they weren't going to build something that would be incompatible with the type of largely historic structures that they have on their property.
Got it, okay.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to just address the precedent of 104 Main Street that you brought up, which in fact, that residence was proposed at a much larger
I know,
GFA.
yeah, I'm aware.
So
Yeah, let's
I want you to understand that this is what we have here before us, and you have given us the whole metric. But this is an additional layer of review, which is exactly what occurred with that application. And it was something that we were able to bring that down. So I just want you to understand that.
I am, and I do bring it up in part for that
So
reason.
this is not, that is a precedent in that regard as well.
I understand that, and that's something that, I assume the board's fairly proud of that happening, that process happening.
Well.
But part of what I was pointing out was, and I think most people saw that original structure as an 18,000 square foot structure.
Correct.
But what I'm pointing out is that it was ultimately approved essentially as an 18,000 square foot structure when factoring in all the additional mass, the space that does not count towards GFA, but does contribute to mass and impacts in terms of scale. And so what we've done with is what I'm asking you all to consider, is what we've done with this is keep it as economical as possible. So all that excess is not part of our proposal, right? We're not, I hope you would agree that the type of project that was is not this project in terms of,
It's very different.
keeping things to as, and you may disagree with, none of you know what the needs are of my clients. I do, and they know
Well,
what
we
their
wish we
needs are.
did.
But,
I guess.
but this is the usable portion of this building represents what they need. And they're proposing it for this property, which is one of the parcels they own. They have several other properties in this area that they keep vacant, and they want to keep it that way. And, they have development rights intact, but they don't want to develop those properties. And so there's a need for a barn to take care of these properties. And this is the most suitable place for it, and this is the parcel that we're proposing it on. So.
Okay.
Do we have the original renderings or renderings of the structure? Just because it's also, I think, to refresh our own memories of what this is going to look like.
The rendering?
Do we have that? Yeah,
Picture.
thank you.
Sketch.
Yeah, the drawings, I should call them.
Floor plans.
Yeah, so
I go through it.
So the first floor is basically an empty storage space for farm equipment, as I recall, and the second floor has 2 apartments on either side there.
Okay.
Is there a floor plan?
There is.
Yeah, it's right in the beginning. I can go through this is the first one.
Yeah, okay. Can you enlarge that a little bit, Dan? It's hard to visualize what this is because there's so much emptiness there, but
Try to,
yeah.
Yeah, I guess we all still struggle with how programmatically this is fulfilling a need, but it's essentially a barn, except you wouldn't be able to build a barn here on its own. So it's now a single-family residence.
Yeah, that's the legal use for this property. And I can say there are other open tracts of land that the family owns on which they could build a barn, an actual barn, but they don't want to. They don't want, at this point in time, to mess with the vistas that exist on these open tracts. And so, you could argue, and I don't want to get into that argument with you, but you could certainly argue that there is a give and take with this, which is we're designing a legal structure that's fully conforming to every metric for this 90 Beach Lane property, and it's going to serve a need that helps us keep doing with other portions of the land that the family owns, keep them in their open configuration. Whether you agree with that or not, I have no idea, but there's logic to what the family's doing, and they're doing it in a way that is legal under the code, so.
So where do we go from here?
Could you just pull up the
We
pictures
can't-
that I took?
We have to get the site plan
Also,
stuff.
just so we can see
sorted.
those.
Yeah.
And then, what else? Thought I had another question. Okay, so this is.
The neighbor's house.
The neighbor to the south. So you have the applicant's property where the building, the barn building is proposed, then this small structure that we've reviewed, this board has reviewed, and then that's the neighboring property to the south. So you can see how that roof line or those roof lines are visible and how it sort of looms over this, this property. And then keep going. Oh, so this is, yeah, this is the service entrance or entrance to this Beach Lane property in 90 Beach Lane. These are the cedars that are on the corner of the property of 90 Beach Lane, but they're drastically encroaching on the other property. You can keep going. This is the view from that direct neighbor to the south, just over all of the sort of bittersweet and just growth that's there. But you in your presentation had a similar picture, but it was much more green. And as this, evolves, I guess my point is, you're going to have this little cottage sandwiched between these two very large structures. But to my earlier point, I'm not exactly finding a good support for mitigation of that structure with all of this screening, because what you're going to get is this little house stuck between hedges, basically. And I don't, I'm trying to think of this as a whole.
I understand your point. And the building itself, as you know, is going to be 50-something feet set off from that property line. We're proposing the extra vegetation as a way to mitigate. However, if that neighbor were to say, we don't want it, we'd rather look at the barn than look at the evergreens, I don't think our clients would care about that and probably would save a few dollars planting evergreens that may not be necessary. That said, we're in a catch-22 to say, you're supposed to try to mitigate impacts and soften scale and all that.
But you're using vegetation to do that. That's my point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but that's sort of a normal way of screening a structure that could have some visual impact. Now, not everybody minds looking at other buildings. I mean, I don't know those neighbors, so I've never had a conversation with them. I understand they were here last year when this was presented and had no objection at that time to what was going on.
well, these aren't
can't
public
speak to
hearings. They can't object in the meeting.
No, but to us, like, they had a conversation with, they had a conversation with Beth, and they had no problem with what was being presented, so, but I can't speak for them, obviously, and I don't want to say that I have a letter of support or anything from them. We've never talked to them, but I can say, either way, if they don't like the vegetation and would rather look at the barn, I don't think that matters to us. We were proposing it as a mitigation measure and are willing to do it either way.
Well, I don't know what else to say. I mean, we had requested a reduction in the mass and scale that was only addressed with the vegetation. So in my mind, I don't feel that's sufficient.
Okay. Did you have anything more for him, Esperanza?
Just in reviewing the subdivision,
Covenants, yeah.
yeah, well,
The subdivision, yeah, the
it's not
record.
covenants, yeah.
Yeah.
There was and perhaps you could look into this because I'm reading it for the first time. And I'll read it to you, if I may.
Sure.
The applicant shall prepare and submit for review by council to this board a non-exclusive easement of access in favor of Lot 3 and passing through Lot 1 as shown on the map, which is a map that's attached. This easement shall permit the owner of Lot 3 or his successors in interest to allow access over the said easement to Wainscott Pond by residents of the town of East Hampton, and shall not be capable of revocation, termination, or amendment, whether by the owner of Lot 1 or by agreement between the owner of Lot 1 and the owner of Lot 3, without written consent of a majority plus one of the East Hampton Town Planning Board after public hearing. I just wanted to bring that to your attention because it caught my attention that there appears to be a public access that
Interesting.
I can't
should
respond to
exist.
that. I have no
But
idea.
I'm not sure. So that's why I'm bringing it to your attention.
Well,
So it's actually something that I am aware is, this applicant owns pretty much all access to Wainscott Pond. And it would be a really marvelous gift to the community to have some kind of access to that pond.
Well, it seems it's required, but anyway, we'll have to review that further along with the turnaround issues.
Yeah.
Diane,
say
did
it's
you
not
have
all-
anything? Excuse me, sir.
Just for the record.
Did you have anything, Diane?
I think that what is being proposed here, considering all the context of everything about this neighborhood, I mean, I would not question it any further. I would vote yes to proceed.
Okay, Chip?
I mean, I think what we're missing here is this is a vast estate that's got multiple buildings, multiple driveways. It's not just this little piece that you're talking about. And I notice you've carefully shaded out the house and everything else as if it doesn't exist. It does exist. Given that, and given what Diane said, I am not opposed to this project. I think it's gotten incredibly complicated because it's not obvious what it is. It's a barn, it's 2 apartments, it's a house. But I am, given the whole picture, I am not opposed to this project.
Okay. You want to?
I don't have anything else
Yeah,
to
okay.
add to that. no.
All right. Well, I just wanted to give you another shot at it. I would like to see it brought down in mass and scale. I take council's point about the zoning code and all these other issues, but we don't, that's not our, we don't use those gauges. And I think at this point, what I would recommend is that we get something sorted regarding the turnaround, the emergency turnaround, and this public access thing. It's been our experience as we review some of the original maps and legal instruments that created some of these subdivisions back in the day, which haven't always been reviewed by various boards, that we sometimes uncover things that we didn't know were there. So I think I'd like to just table this. We'll put this over until we can get those site plan issues remedied.
Well,
And
can I, since obviously we've objected to that, right?
you've objected to
I
the,
have objected to the idea that that's an issue that needs to be resolved
oh,
before this board can act. I do disagree with that.
okay. John,
But
can
I
you
said
help here?
you'll take advice from council,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I'm asking him now. What's your position on this? Can we hold it over until we get this?
Are you basically saying that regardless of what the version says, requires something that's your lot of positions?
Sorry?
In other words, they're saying that they're concerned about the access of the turnaround. And then perhaps you're blocking the turnaround with this design, this landscape plan. So if that becomes an issue, are you basically saying we're only looking for an approval of the structure? We're not
Yes,
looking
yeah.
for any site improvements?
I'm actually saying we're not proposing right now to block that.
Right.
And
Okay.
we will, I'm saying on the record, we will absolutely be required to address that when we go in for a building permit application. And we're the building inspector to say, I find that the way your hedges block that access, you need to take those hedges down, they come down. It's not complicated, and so I don't think that issue
So,
should stop this board. You
Yeah,
don't get
I
to
get
get
it,
there.
I get
You don't
it,
even
yep, I
get to
get it, I
get to
get
the building
it. So what about the access to the pond that Esperanza just read from the,
well, again, I mean, he's asking for an approval that relates to the building. He's
Right.
not asking you to encumber or impede
Okay.
anything else.
No,
that's-
yeah,
Okay.
that was just something I wanted to bring to the
Yeah,
attention.
no, I
but
but it's-
my
it's-
understanding was that if
Yeah.
this required site
site
plan,
approval, right?
you couldn't.
Right, and that was my feeling too, but you're saying we don't have to worry about the site plan issues. That's what I'm hearing you say, I don't know if that's what you mean.
I think it's what he
Yeah,
said.
based on what's being presented, yes, I would say that
Okay.
it's not something to be concerned about in this application.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, in the process, if there's an issue related to it, it'll have to be addressed. in this application, But I don't see.
And this is
that-
recorded, so I'm acknowledging the fact that we will
No,
have to deal with it.
He recused on this application.
Oh, so he's not part of it at all.
He's not part of this discussion. Okay, well, what do you want to do?
Well, if you proceed to a vote, we'll vote. If everyone is ready to vote.
Frank is
Sorry, Frank
excused
is
himself.
Frank is recused. He just recused himself from this right before we started, so it's just the four of us. I mean, he'll be back in when we're done here, one hopes. Yeah, I guess I don't, we're getting a strong indication from the applicant that they're not willing to do anything further to reduce the mass and scale as we requested.
May I just say one other thing, though? If there were something else that you had a suggestion for, I'm not saying we're not willing to make any consideration of anything. What I am saying is that we did discuss the reduction of the mass and scale. So were there to be some other design element that you had an issue with? I haven't heard any. You don't like the windows, you don't like the siding, you don't, whatever. If there were something else,
Yeah,
we're
generally
open
speaking,
to it.
yeah,
but-
generally speaking, as the follow-up letter that was written back in June of this year, we're generally favorable to the design and the materials. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. I'm looking at the wrong one.
Well, I would say actually that because the drawings that were submitted were drawings that, hand-drawn, in seeing the renderings submitted by LaGuardia Design, you are asking what might help mitigate the impact of this in addition? I would say it not be white.
Reduce the mass and scale color renderings. Yeah, do we have the
If that
materials?
were something that
That's
would
one
make a
thing that
difference.
could help, but that doesn't necessarily change my mind.
I
I'm just
understand.
saying that it doesn't make it
It wouldn't be so, yeah.
I
visible.
would say that
prominent.
that's the kind of thing where if there were a consensus among the board, we'd be happy to take that to the clients, because that doesn't affect the programmatic needs of the client, and it's certainly something that, they do have some white structures on their properties, but they also have, natural wood structures on their properties, and plenty of them, so don't think that's something that would be taken poorly by the family if that was a consensus among the board.
Thank you.
Well, I was just looking for the materials, but I didn't,
In the original
yeah,
application?
yeah.
Yeah, well done. You have, there's a foundation in brick and a paint color for exterior doors in a Benjamin Moore Hunter Green soft gloss. And then the siding, from what I understand, is just I guess, cedar painted white, but I don't have that actually. See, it was not ever very, it was marked on the drawing, but not really submitted in the,
Traditional.
in.
Yeah, I understand.
this. So,
And the roof shingles are,
yeah, so all of that is not exactly, I mean, the roof shingles, I think, are natural cedar as well, right? That's depicted here, I think.
okay, well, maybe we could ask that the building not be painted white, and if it's cedar, it's cedar clapboarding, is that it? Or is it shingles?
It looks like clapboard, horizontal board. All right, I'm looking for that. Is this the only thing that I have? I can't,
I mean, in terms of the landscape plan, I don't know.
what?
I mean, I think they're making good suggestions for the landscaping, but it's,
I think it walls it in.
that's what I was just about to say, is I think it walls it in,
Okay.
which isn't,
No, this
hope.
was an area of, and it continues to be, still has an air of being open. So I'm just not keen on that. That's why I don't think it mitigates anything. I think it makes it worse, creates that corridor.
so what are we gonna?
Well, we can vote. I mean,
Recommend
let's vote
on that? Well, I would like to see the siding in natural cedar instead, let it gray instead of having it be white, that'll at least tone it down a tiny bit. There's so much roof, and the roof are cedar shingles. I don't know what more to do. I mean, we've given them, this is this is the third time we've seen this, and there hasn't been any change, really. So I guess make a motion, and we'll see what people think. I don't know what else to do.
So shall I make a motion for this application as submitted?
Well,
Or with that consideration of, I mean, that's
condition that,
the
You
condition that whether you're
I would
accepting
invite you
that or-
to, if you,
With-
if the
Or would you
preference.
prefer that we wait and have you consult with your client about the siding, is my question.
It may not make a difference to you. I guess I'm trying not to be, I don't want to be cheeky about it, but if you were to say that no matter what you do with the building, there's 2 votes against you, and since there's only 4 of you, that doesn't change anything for us. So would I rather find out today if there's 2 votes against that can't be altered? Sure. But if there's an openness to a majority approval, if we were to change the siding, you just have to say that, and we will, you can either approve it that way, or if you would prefer to have that plan in front of you, table it until we come back. But I just don't want to waste another few weeks on this if that is an inalterable thing that's not going to make a difference to at least 2 of you. So, is that fair? I don't mean to.
Yeah, I can't speak for anyone else. I just, I don't believe that the request for a substantial mitigation of the mass and scale was provided, so.
I'm hearing that. from you.
Okay.
I realize.
You want to poll the board so he has the sense of how
I
we're
think
thinking?
you have a sense of what our decisions are.
I sort of do, but sort of don't, because there's two
But yeah, no,
and 2 and 1, and 1, I don't know. So, and it takes 2.
That's up to the chair.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's really on me, because I
I don't
think,
mean to do that to you.
that's okay.
but-
Or whether you want to poll.
No, that's right, we can poll the board, it makes sense. I think that's a sensible approach. Diane, I assume you're in favor?
Yes, I am in
And
favor
Chip?
of it.
I'm in favor. I prefer the white to the natural shingle.
You prefer the white? Okay. And Esperanza?
I would be opposed.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards being opposed, but that doesn't get us anywhere with this. It's just so darn big. So the motion would fail if we voted, because there's just 2 and 2. I would have to change my vote for it to pass. I'm not comfortable doing that. Why don't, can we take another pass at this and try to get you on sooner rather than later? And maybe give us a sample of the clapboarding without the white, and see if there isn't some other way to,
So it's a fair
address some of
request.
these
If you would like us to show that, if you would like to see it
yeah.
with a different version other than the white, then we would like to provide that to you.
Okay, I think that would be the best way to go
And I can at least
forward.
confer with the clients and
Yeah, that would,
confirm. I don't have any expectation that that'll be a problem.
yeah, I understand. Okay, let's do that.
Anything else?
Require to see the materials or just,
But generally, we ask for a sample, but I think if you could send us, like you did the paint sample, there's, we need, that
We
would be helpful.
never really had a proper rendering of this,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah,
And we usually ask that of all applicants.
it was just a sketch, so, which is not, it was a nice sketch, but it wasn't traditional in terms of what we use to evaluate the materials and the way the things fit together.
when you think we would, is there a time frame for, we get something to you by
I'll
blank date?
try to accelerate it if I can. It depends on how quickly you can resubmit. We only have 3 more meetings in this calendar year. We only meet twice a month, so.
So I'll commit to doing that with as much haste as we can.
Okay.
And then I appreciate that you have offered to try to accelerate getting us back on the
Yep,
agenda.
okay.
All right,
All right, great, thank you.
thank you.
All right. Let's see if we can get Frank back in. Could someone, how do we alert him that he's back?
Oh, he's here.
Still here.
Oh, there he is, great, okay. Number 8 is Wayne Scott, MTS Holdings LLC, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-196-1-23. I see Mr. Scotty is here with his team, and Diane, this is yours.
Yes. Okay, gentlemen. Hello. Everyone, hi.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've just had a very good lesson about metrics and math and scale and
All things we.
all of these things that are very intrinsic to this project. But the difference is, and the uniqueness is the location of this property. This is, we see, are they my pictures?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a nice photo.
So this is where this house is to be built. Keep going. And this is the open field, and you can see they're very small residences that are on the other side of that field. Keep going. This is the one house that has been constructed. And it's sort of like an apparition, I think we're all stunned that we eventually approved this house. I'm standing now on Wainscott Hollow Road looking across. You can see that house. So there are 5 or 6 buildable lots. And the second house, lot number 7, and this is the house that Jeffrey Collet kindly moved to sort
Well,
of,
kindly no, he had to move it.
yeah, well, to maintain some kind of like respect and historical of the area. So now, this unique situation, if all 6 of these lots are built with houses that are like the one that's been constructed, the one we've recently approved and the one you're approving, unfortunately, I think we called it I don't know, something about a high-end suburb or something. It's really, it's almost like so we've said to you that we think the math, we think the scale, and you've come back to us with very nice letters, with considerations. You've removed 6 feet here, 1 foot there, 2 feet here. You've changed the hardscaping, so basically, but there's lots of covered porches, and there's a huge basement, and it's a fully developed property that I think when it's constructed, it's going to look very much like the one that we're looking at. Although the roof lines are better, I think the treatments are better. I think it's more well-considered. The thing that is sort of out of precedent, and I don't know who we would request it of, it would be very interesting if we could see a rendition, a drawing of the house that's there, the house you're proposing, the house we have approved. If we could see it all, I think there's, I don't know whether that would be your charge or who could take on that responsibility, but we've received a very, an interesting letter today from a neighbor. And I think the one line that bears repeating is so simple, but a big house is a big house, and these are all big houses. And, we have the opportunity that we have never embraced of having a public hearing. And it could be that this is the appropriate time for us to consider that, because it's an extremely sensitive
Area.
situation.
Yeah.
And I think very unique, and we don't want to, I appreciate your compromises and what you've presented to us, but just the inevitability of what it's all going to look like is really, I don't know, maybe it's not too late to.
You see this one,
No, there's no
So-
resolution. It's a new application.
This is the first time we've
No,
ever
no,
seen
we've
it.
seen it
Seen this.
before.
Perhaps you were
I
absent?
think I wasn't
It
here.
might
I don't
have
think I've
been,
ever
but-
seen
It
this.
was June 22nd, you were away.
Maine. Okay,
Must have been
okay.
Beautiful, right?
Because
This is only the second time for this house, right?
this is the second time
time, yes.
they're here.
Okay, because I've never seen this before.
Oh, okay.
So we should, for his benefit,
Right.
actually go
Let's
through
review
it.
it.
Yeah, we should flip
I didn't
through.
realize Chip hadn't been here for that first presentation, so that would be helpful.
Okay, can I ask one question? Looking at this page, A202 or whatever it is, yes, A202. Now, is this proposed landscaping, or is this just, you haven't talked at all about, a landscape design or anything like that, but so what we're seeing here, is this the proposed landscape as well, or is it just the?
So we've included some landscaping in the renderings to provide scale,
Yeah, I
to
think-
provide some scale for the house. But we thought it would be more beneficial to the board to not obstruct the architecture with vegetation so that you get a true sense of what we're proposing.
Good call.
As Frank noted at 4:15 today in another application, don't hide the architecture with hedges. So that's what we're showing. Would it be helpful if I just sort of walked Chip
Yeah, that'd be
through
great. Let's do it.
certainly.
Yep.
drawings?
And perhaps we could, I don't know if we can zoom them into them because they're hard to see.
They're harder to see from here. Do they present as
It's like
individual
this.
pages? I see.
No, they-
Top left, yes.
There you go.
Okay.
This is the front elevation of the home that has been broken down. We've broken the volume, the horizontal volume, down into a number of different sections that allows us to step the roof line down. So there's only a small section of the building.
Hey, Dan, sorry to interrupt. Can you, or at least, is there a way I could hear this better?
Can you?
Yeah, I can.
I just switched the microphones. It should be better, Frank.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, Dan.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, there we go. Thanks. Too damn.
Frank, is that good? Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So
Sorry to
essentially,
interrupt.
we've taken the building and we've broken it down into horizontal volumes so that we could step the roof line and break some of the mass and scale. So if you look at this all the way to the left, which is furthest east, that roof height is only about, I think, 26 feet. Then it steps down to just over 10 feet. It steps up to 12 feet here. And there's only maybe a third of it or less that's at 32 feet. So if you take the weighted average of all of the roof heights, you're at like between 22 and 23 feet total. So that's one of the ways that we kept the mass and scale of this house in check. The other thing that we did is, and I think the board recognized this at the June 22nd hearing, is that we varied the materials that we're using. We're using an Alaskan yellow cedar, but then we're also using some painted barn board, which breaks the volumes down even visually further. And as you can see, it's very traditional style of architecture. We're using double hung windows with 16/1 light cuts. We were very conservative in our use of fenestration, which the board noted in at the June 22nd hearing and also in their follow-up letter to us. Ray Renault, the architect that I work with on this project, is also here, and I'll let him further elaborate on the design.
This is a barn-like house, and we're standing across the street from it, right?
Yes, you're standing across the street looking south. Yeah, so this would be sort of the tail end of that shared driveway. The lot just to the east of this, or to the left of the screen, is the one that was approved in September. That would be lot 7.
Lot 7.
And this house that we've proposed is smaller in square footage and in mass and scale than both the property that was proposed for lot 7 and also the one that was proposed for lot 4. The images that you had up earlier of the house that was approved for lot 4, if you can remember, it was essentially one big long ridge line at 32 feet that extended the full width of the building. We didn't do that. And that also had reverse gables facing the reserve. We didn't do that either. We don't have any gables facing the reserve. It's essentially an up and over gable. What you see on this side is what you see on the south side. So these are all of the things that we did before we even presented the application in June. Mm-hmm. The board was very happy with the design and the materials that were used, and they said it was harmonious with wainscot, but you did ask us to go back and talk to our clients to see if there was a way to shift the home further off of the west property line and also a little bit further back from the street. So what we've done is we've shifted it 10 feet further off of this property line on the west. There's lot 5 that I guess hasn't come before you yet, but there'll be at some point something proposed on that lot. So we've shifted the entire structure to the east to give some breathing room, some negative space between this house and whatever gets proposed eventually on lot 5. We pushed it as far east as we possibly could while still allowing an adequate turning radius to get into the garage. There's garage doors that are facing the east. And we needed to leave space to get in and out of those garage bays. The other thing I'd like to point out is that the residence that has been approved for lot 7 is not in line with this residence that we're proposing. It's much further back. So there's going to be a natural stagger. In terms of distance of this proposed home from the street, we've pushed it back as far as we possibly can, given the fact that there's a tennis court on the rear of the property, and we have a 50-foot setback off of the southern property line. That's required by this subdivision.
Well, I'd like to just note that the reason that house is lot 7 is because they eliminated their tennis court and they did everything to accommodate our
request
apprehensions. They did, they did a massive not so much a reduction in scale, but by eliminating the tennis court and they turned the house around. I mean, they completely listened to everything that we said and,
Responded.
yeah, and I think it moved us to approve the house. That's why I don't know, because this is so unique, this situation. That's why if we could somehow see your proposal, that house, the house that's existing, and the empty spaces, if we could sort of see that,
Yeah, we need it in context to really
to
be
see
able
it in
to-
context, I think it would just do everybody so much, it would be so enlightening.
It'd be a model, basically. A model. I mean, a board with these things.
Or even a
Rendering?
rendering. I mean, a model would be fantastic, but even a rendering.
Anybody make those anymore?
Gary Lauren. So this house has a proposed emergency service turnaround in the front yard, too.
It does, and we are complying with that. We've located the driveway
Orange.
right in line with the emergency turnaround.
So it's partially your driveway, it looks like, right? Or-
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Okay,
And this is the lot that's encumbered by that, of this subdivision.
yeah.
Lucky us. So Lot 7, the house that was proposed for Lot 7 is a pretty house. The landscaping is absolutely beautiful. But as Frank noted, on September 28th, when it was approved, someone decades from now could bulldoze all of that beautiful landscaping and and he didn't say this, but I'll add, and throw a pickleball court on there, or 2 pickleball courts.
Agreed.
Yeah,
That could happen.
absolutely. It's possible.
We are completely transparent. This is what we're proposing as developing this lot. We didn't encumber it with landscaping because we want you to see the architecture.
And I think the architecture is very amenable, you know, I mean, this is a much more palatable house than the house that's been erected already. It's much more. Everything about it is softer and is more compatible.
Thank you.
More harmonious.
I think the word was friendly that you used.
Friendly.
First hearing.
Okay, yeah. But
Can we see the other
would love
photos
to-
real fast?
Yeah, Chip hasn't seen this, so it'd be good
Yeah,
if we
we'd
could
like
look
to
at
try to
all of
give
it.
him a complete view of this because he'll need to vote on it too. So those are those east-facing driveway doors. Is that pavilion? Where
Is that
You
a,
can see that's the rear elevation facing the reserve. Very conservative use of fenestration and very few roofed over areas on the main residence. The Lot 4, after it was approved in January of 2001, they subsequently came back to the board and you approved a massive covered deck that runs across the entire back of that house. We don't have that here.
Is the tennis court there?
Tennis court's right below that hedge, yeah.
Sunken.
It's sunken.
Sunken,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And there's no gable ends facing the reserve.
We also wanted this house to feel like it was something that was built over time, you know, multi-generational, you know, house
Yeah, I
that
think you've achieved that, yeah.
will be used in that manner, you know?
I like that. I think that was a good tool.
well,
Okay. Did you have any other questions? Did you want, do you?
I've kind of gotten it. It's
Okay.
somewhat similar to your other houses, only it's not painted white.
Right.
But I get it. I mean, I think the problem here is that the reality that this little subdivision, which is not little, is now getting built up, and we're kind of shocked with the results. Not this house, but the overall results.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it goes back to when the town, against its will, approved this thing 30 years ago. What did they think was going to happen here? I mean, the most expensive real estate in the world is going to get the most expensive and large houses here. So I think the idea of a model or a rendering showing the whole thing would be helpful, but this is what we've ended up with based on a bunch of decisions that were made
Made a
long
long time
before we
ago.
sat here and looked at these houses. So it's inevitable that, you know, this is actually a pretty good house and it fits the setting. I think it's sympathetic to local architecture. But, you know, there's other houses on this block that aren't so much, so. I'm
Yeah, I mean, I would say one comment I would make among some is the problem here the zoning or the architecture?
Well, I think it could be considered both,
Well, it's the zoning when the houses don't go our way, and it's the architecture sometimes makes up for it, but, I mean, this is a sympathetic house to Wainscott.
yes.
I guess the reason I say that is that where does this leave an applicant when, if we don't like how the subdivision has been zoned?
It's too bad for us.
Well, we don't have that, there's nothing we can do about that. Chip eloquently says it's too bad for us.
That's a
but
fact.
We can address the mass and scale and whether it harmonizes with the area. So I think that's part of what our challenge is right now is, is the mass and scale.
Yeah, it's also not even,
I'd just like to finish my sentence.
sure, I'm sorry.
Is the mass and scale harmonious? And, I think,
It's a very,
I
still
think,
very big
yes,
house.
so.
Very big.
I
There's so
mean,
many dining tables. I mean, it's a big house.
Well, so maybe this is a good opportunity for public hearing. Why don't we,
We received 2 letters about this already?
yeah, but that's not the
No, I'm
reason
just-
we would put it to
No,
public
I'm just-
hearing anyway. Yes, we did receive 2 letters from Wainscott residents that are concerned about the size or the mass and scale and the harmony, which is our purview. And we did determine about 12 months ago that we would like to use that tool on certain agricultural overlay applications as they come before us. And maybe that's what we need to do, is hear from the public on this. See what people think.
But we've never invoked this before, but
Right. But there's a first time, and I think this is a good example, because at this point, to my mind, the applicant has done everything we've asked them to do, or at least as much as they feel they can offer.
well,
And they might
I mean,
be,
they have addressed the mass and scale to a point, but I
Right.
said it's a foot here, 2 feet there, 6
Yeah.
feet here. It's,
oh, okay.
I mean, yes, you have addressed it, and the roof line is certainly a much more appealing roof line,
Yeah.
but it's still, I mean,
Yeah, sorry.
this one, that one,
Yeah, it's
This
hard to
one-
see the context
yeah.
as a whole.
Well, I think
is
we
what-
need in context.
and, all those people that live in the houses on the other side of
Sears Path,
On Sayers Path.
on Sayers Path.
little tiny
know.
houses,
I mean,
mostly.
maybe it would be interesting to at least allow them to have the opportunity to put their 2 cents in. I don't know,
It's an important tool. People have already expressed interest. think
May
we
I be
should
heard
do
on
it.
that issue?
Excuse me?
Is that going to be something that you're considering? Can I be heard on that issue? On
I'm having a
whether
little
it's,
trouble hearing. You could just step back from that mic. I don't know, they changed the mics and there's a lot
Better?
of feedback.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's sort of blurring altogether.
may I be heard on the issue of whether it should be open to public comment?
Maybe, but it's our decision. Yeah, I'm
I understand
happy
that.
to hear what you have to say.
I understand
But
that.
it may or may not influence our decision.
Understood.
Okay.
So the first thing that I would say is that our application here is for a home that is smaller than 2 homes on neighboring lots that have already been approved by this board, and they were done so without public hearings. So that to require a public hearing for our application on this lot would be contrary to the board's precedent. That's the first thing that I would say. The second thing that I would say is that the 2 letters that you received at the last minute, essentially, one was today and one was last night, are essentially expressing frustration at the zoning and what the code allows. Both letters said that they don't mean to single out this particular application. They're upset that this subdivision was approved. And they're basically expressing frustration that a subdivision that was approved after many, many years of hotly contested issues is now actually being developed. That's what you're
No,
hearing.
we understand. I
The
understand
last thing
that.
I would say is that a public hearing is not going to assist in your review of this application. This board is just fine without public comment. You did well with the other 2 applications. You don't need neighbor, and if we were to open this to public comment, we would be issuing notice to the neighbors. The neighbors here are applicants who are proposing homes that are larger than the one that we're proposing, and 2 of them have already been approved. Neither of the 2 letters that you've received would receive notice of this because they're not neighbors. Our clients that we're representing here actually live in Waynescott. They've been living in Waynescott for over 12 years, and they care about the community. They hired us because we design homes that are homogeneous. So I would just propose that it would be contrary to the board's precedent and unfair to open this application to public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one other thing that, as I was reading and delving and thinking how to approach this, that it has come up in a few places that what happens to the soil that gets displaced and must stay on the property? What happens to it?
So the soil's incredible in this location. So the first thing we do is we scrape the first, top layer, 8 to 10 inches, and we store it and we reuse it. We reuse all the topsoil. This particular lot, as Lot 7, there's a fairly significant change in grade from the north side of this lot to the south side of this lot. So we will be using as much of the soil as we possibly can to grade the property.
I know, but there's a very complete basement planned here with all sorts of rooms and
Yes.
everything.
And tennis
What,
court.
and a tennis court and a pool, where does all that dirt go?
Yeah,
Where does
it gets
go?
redistributed on the lot. It's a it's a 1.5 acre lot.
Yeah.
You can picture the sunken tennis court to essentially be at the existing grade at the backside of the property. We would be filling around the tennis court to create that, sunken appearance with the grade that we pull out from the foundation.
Well, that doesn't sound very good, because then you're changing the topography of a flat farm field, so I'm not sure that's a great idea.
It's all gradual.
but
This is the same question that was posed
Yeah.
to the applicants that for Lot 7 was posed with this exact same question.
And same answer.
Yeah, I don't think, they have,
Correct.
they're not permitted to move it off-site, so they
Understood.
have to find a way to put it on.
I understand. I'm just saying, the idea is not to then make hills.
Yes, I get it. Okay, well,
I was going to say that, that said, this has been zoned to be developed. So there's an understanding that even though the soil can't leave, that it is going to have to be excavated,
Yes.
The only way to not have the soil disturbed is to not zone it for development.
That ship is left.
Right. The question is how intense the development so that it's not that much soil that's moved, right? Or
yeah,
shifted.
the less excavation, the less soil has to be moved. That's true. So if there was no tennis court, for instance, you wouldn't have to excavate for the tennis court, just as an example. It's a simple concept.
Dan, do your clients really want a tennis court?
They do, yeah.
Yeah. So,
We've even compromised with the clients on the size of the scale of the tennis court. We've got it down to really the minimal acceptable dimensions that they would be able to use.
It's not a full-size court.
It's just a couple
Few
feet
feet less.
Yeah. But, well, I don't know. How does everybody feel? Frank?
I think we should have a public
I do
hearing.
too.
Frank? Frank?
Honestly, I don't want to comment about whether this should merits a public hearing or not. I'm going to leave that to the chair.
You have to vote on it, and you can abstain from the vote if you like, but it's a vote of the board. So generally, the protocol is that we have, we feel as though the application has gone as far as it can in the relationship between the applicant and the board, and that we would benefit from public comment on this, on the submission. So if you feel that there's something else you can recommend to them, or other board members feel that we can go back to the applicant and try and take another pass at this, we can do that. But I didn't I feel as though they've made a this feels like a package to me. It feels like this is what you're submitting.
I think it's a valid question the applicant has is what is the purpose of, I know that obviously on the surface that it's to get public input about how they feel about this, but what is the end goal here of having a public hearing? I think the applicant has a right to know that.
The end goal of any public hearing is to permit public comment on development in the town. That's what the hearings are for. They're for the public to weigh in a formal way. Those comments are then tabulated and referenced and used by the board to determine whether more mitigations can be made. Sometimes we get wacky comments. I mean, it's not, this board has not employed that tool in a long time, but in my tenure on the planning board, there were lots of public hearings, and people can say whatever they want, pretty much. But I think that we determined almost a year ago that we were going to employ this tool on these ag overlay applications, kind of for this reason. There might be things we're not considering that the public can weigh in on. And maybe there's nothing further that can be done. It could go either way, but the public hearing process is not going to hurt anything. It'll make it take longer. And I take your point that, clearly most applicants are not saying, yes, please, let's have a public hearing. I get that. But I think it's a tool that we determined to employ. And I think I think this is a good example. Because I don't think it's that controversial. I think it would be a useful exchange of information from the public on this application, and because it is such a sensitive area, as Member Benson has articulated, I think it would be useful.
I think Diane is correct. I think what this public hearing is that it's feeding the applicant. How do I say this diplomatically? It's like feeding this applicant to the wolves, and I feel like this public hearing is not going to be about this house. It is going to be about development in general, and I do take the applicant's point about how this is being viewed, or how we review this relative to what has been approved. Now, I realize we didn't approve the other houses, but I do think there is my personal view is there is some, how equitable that is in terms of treatment as an applicant listen, it's a big house. I get it. I don't like how this has been zoned. I don't like how the subdivision has been zoned. I do also think that this applicant has made pretty concerted effort to deal with a program requested by the client and make some responses to what there has been some, I did note that there is the house has been pulled off the side lot line. There have been improvements to this. So that is my one thought to this.
You can vote against having a public hearing if you want, Frank. I mean, you're not required to vote in favor of the public hearing, and we can take a vote and it may fail. I don't know. But I think it's useful to do it. I think if if we'll never have a public hearing if that's the criteria. Yeah. Because, part of soliciting comment from the public is that you cannot, during the hearing, we can confine the remarks to this application. And that's one of the things that the chair does when the public hearing happens, is to please confine your remarks to this application. And maybe no one will come. I mean, it's completely possible nobody will come.
Well, the two letter writers will come.
Well, maybe they will, and we'll see what they have to say. But, the part of this process is that it focuses the attention on this application. It's this big, and the context of it is relevant to our deliberations, and how the public may feel on the context is also relevant. I don't see the harm. I really don't see the harm. I think
In
when the
terms of
public
time,
weighs in, it's,
since I've never experienced one before, in terms of time, how much notice has to be given?
there's
How
a formal process. This got to be 30 days, I think. It probably won't happen till the new year would be my guess. I don't know. John, can you give us some advice on that, please?
Published, posted at least 10 days.
Right. So as a general rule of thumb, we allow 3 to 4 weeks for that, right? Just because the Star is the paper of record and it only publishes once a week and.
Start the newspaper needs.
More than a week it's going to come out.
Okay. But it's roughly a 3-week.
And then
timeframe,
notification
right?
of neighbors that.
Yeah, but that's part of what their attorneys would do, was notify there's an affidavit that has to be submitted and so forth, and it has to be published in the paper. And then it happens. So it's November 9th, I suppose. I think our last meeting is December 16th. I don't think we.
November
14th. So, thank you, Julie.
We have a lot of holidays in between.
And in the meantime, there's a push to rewrite the town code to shrink the allowable GFA, which puts the whole application at risk.
Well, I don't think that's true.
I think that's.
But I think we could probably get it, I think as a practical matter, the public hearing could be held on January 11. That's our first meeting in the new calendar year, right? Yeah.
If there's going to be a vote on this, I respectfully request that our attorney make a few comments on the record.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello, good evening, Chairwoman, members of the board. I feel like there's been, especially Mr. Guitard has mentioned, to make this application.
I'm sorry?
Sorry.
Mr. Guitard?
Oh, guitar.
Could you state your name?
What
Oh,
is your
sorry,
name?
David Kirst from Matthews, Kirst and Cooley, 241 Panago Road, East Hampton, for the applicant. To make this application the guinea pig for the public hearings, based on what is general community opposition from one party who lives on Sayers Path, not a neighbor, wouldn't be a noticed neighbor for a public hearing, and somebody who lives in Amagansett, seems to be, Mr. Jelnicki will weigh in eventually, the height of arbitrary to now choose this application to make a public hearing required when you literally 2 months ago on a neighboring property with a larger house that I've seen say all admit that this house is architecturally above, far and above from your design perspective, to now require this application to go through the public hearing and have that process seems the definition of arbitrary. These applicants has done a lot in the original design, further has come back and done more, and their requirement here for a public hearing is not just because you want to hear from the public, it's whether or not it will affect your decision. And here, you all are, at least from what I'm hearing, expressing your favor for this design. And as Mr. Scotti mentioned, these objections are to the zoning. These are objections that aren't particular to this property. They're particular to your prior decisions. They're particular to the planning board's decision. They're not relevant particularly to this application and to what's in front of you and being asked to be voted on.
Just to comment to that, that's not why we're proposing the public hearing. That's not the reason we're proposing the public hearing. It's not because 2 people wrote in. I'm not sure that's been made clear. That's not that there's interest in the public, which we have acknowledged, but that's not why we were going to have a public hearing.
So then what's different about this application from Lot 7?
Right.
Lot 7.
You
no,
will recall that I requested a public hearing
I
for
recall,
that.
and
Okay, so this is not an arbitrary move on this particular application either.
Right, the motion failed, so.
That's a different, and we haven't voted
And
yet.
it may fail here too.
You haven't allowed us to vote
It may
yet.
fail here too.
For us, and again, this is there is precedent. It was a 4-to-1 vote on a larger house on a property right next door to this, that you've all admit this property, this design is better than.
But they eliminated the tennis court in order to move the house off of the street, so there's not this facade of these big houses. I think that's,
The mitigations were different, and I think, I don't feel that, I don't feel that you understand why we want to have a public hearing. And I don't really feel compelled that it's, we have the right to do this. This board has the right to hold a public hearing. We investigated it, we created a protocol for it, and now we're choosing to employ it. Or we tried to employ it a couple weeks ago and it didn't work. So I know you're not happy about this, and I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be adversarial, but we created this vehicle to help us get public feedback on things just like this. I think the context is part of what we're evaluating. Diane is worried about it. I'm worried about it.
yeah, I'm not sure it's a good idea.
Lot 7 made 0 changes to their GFA, 0. They didn't shrink
We're
1
not
square foot out of
discussing
the
Lot
house.
7, sir.
I understand that.
I'm not going
But
to
we're
take
just-
any
we're
more
discussing-
comments on Lot 7. Lot 7's over. We're talking about whether we're going to have a public hearing on this application.
And that's why
You
Lot
have
7
made
is
all your
relevant.
You've made all your points, and unless Mr. Kirst has something else he needs to say that we haven't already heard, then I would ask you to let us have this vote.
No, I think I've clearly made
Okay,
the legal points here
great.
regarding
Thank you.
this. Thank you.
All right, so
Diane.
Diane, you want to make a motion
To make a motion
for the public hearing?
about the public.
Can I make one last comment if I don't mention
No.
Lot 7?
No.
Yeah.
I promise I won't mention Lot 7.
I don't want to talk about the public hearing process with you any longer. Thank you.
I wasn't going to mention that.
The public hearing process, what is your comment regarding?
I was going to, so we were talking about the merits of the application, and then we had a right turn and talked about public hearing. If we get back to the merits, is there an opportunity to poll the board on whether they would approve this before going to public hearing?
No, I want to find out if this board wants to have a public hearing. That would defeat the purpose of the public hearing.
Okay.
The public hearing is a tool to hear from the public, and it's an evaluative tool. It's a tool to help the board understand what the concerns are in the public. It's a tool that needs to be controlled. It's not willy-nilly, whatever anybody wants to say. And we will assess those, if we even get any, we will assess those comments, tabulate those comments, assuming the board votes to have a public hearing. I don't know that it's even going to pass. So let's just get that aside, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Okay. In all these considerations now, even though I brought it up to begin with, I'm not so sure that this is the application that should have a public hearing. So I find it difficult to put that into words to make the motion.
Okay, so you can make the motion and vote against it. You can make the motion and vote
okay.
against
So-
it. That's not like some rule.
I make a motion that this board considers,
This board conduct a public hearing.
conducts an open public hearing in regards to this application.
Okay, may I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Frank, opposed? Who's
Is
opposed?
he there?
Frank? Oh, no.
Oppose.
Okay.
Opposed.
Diane?
Opposed.
Okay, so the motion fails. There
you go.
See? Done. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. All right, so we're not having a
Okay,
public hearing,
but
so what do you want to
that
do
doesn't
now?
necessarily mean,
I think that was.
I still think that you could make this house a little smaller. a little further from the road, and a little smaller. It's really big.
And I think if you could provide the context of, as Diane described at the beginning of this, it would help the board envision how that whole area is going to look. Okay?
Okay,
All right, great. Thank you.
thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening. All right, we're on to issuance of certificates of occupancy. Michael Fishberg, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-197-8-11. This is yours, Esperanza.
Oh, gosh.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Kathy. As I mentioned
you
at the
gotta
at the beginning of the meeting, I need to go, and, I've stayed
That's
over my
fine.
time,
Thanks,
and
Frank.
I'm glad I was a part of this. Thank you.
Okay, have a good evening. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, so we're down to 4 members. Hopefully that won't make a difference here.
Well, this is a certificate of occupancy, and I actually spoke with Katie earlier. Hello, Katie. This is a C of O for 4 Osborne Lane in Waynescott. We're still in Waynescott. And this was a resolution for an addition that we approved in 2019, I believe?
2021.
2021. Okay, thank you. I was looking for the resolution. And as it turns out, the builder made the addition 9.5 inches larger than the approved plans. So there has been the need for relief. The applicant sought relief for pyramid encroachment and a side yard setback variance, and that was granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals this year in August 15th. So that's one thing. And we can look at the pictures. The addition is the area with the 3 windows above and the 3 windows below to the right here, to the right of the big glass triangular wall. In addition, there was an approval for a pool house that is there, and that ended up undergoing a minor change in the location of the basement cellar doors. It's a Bilco door. And then because of the relocation of the basement cellar doors, and correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, the generator had to be relocated. The existing generator that had been approved at that time.
It did. It got pushed
By this-
further away from the neighbor.
So,
And it's completely enclosed, as you can see.
and that is the new location of the generator.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so it was moved, you've indicated approximately 5 feet further into the property. I think you sent me an email regarding that. So, well, this is on for a CO, but in my mind, this required a modification.
Yeah, I guess it would.
I just
Yeah.
realized.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yep.
I realized not just now, but earlier. And it substantially conforms to what was approved. The issue that I see now, I mean, I don't think the basement doors are going to make or break it. That's fine. My thought is it's very unfortunate that the builder encroached in this way, with this error, but it has been approved, the variance has been approved by the zoning board. So as far as a certificate of occupancy is concerned, I would say it's okay. This could proceed to the CO. I guess the only issue is that we continue to have this issue with the generators, which in this case, I know this board approved that generator, but it was approved in error, and we can't perpetuate that error, and it was relocated, so we're looking at it again. We actually would have had to review that relocation, so that would have been a modification. So regardless, all of this kind of comes together and tells me that I don't know if we can actually, in my mind, proceed with the CO with the generator.
Right, well, can we do
Within
it
the scope.
without the generator? Can we?
Can I
Well, they
explain
still
it
wouldn't
just a
get
little
their
further?
Yeah, go ahead.
If that's
please.
okay.
Please, go ahead.
So regarding the addition to the house, even though 9.5 inches sounds really drastic, and it is, but in terms of square footage, it's only 0.66 square feet.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
there's an elevation there,
Yeah.
Daniel, that shows the encroachment of
It's
the
a little
pyramid.
tiny wedge, yeah,
It's
it's a
a
tiny little
very
thing,
small, and if you can zoom into the top left, I think it is.
The addition, I think unfortunately, the builder didn't get the foundation staked in the field, and that's what happened. It was built a little bit too close to the road, rather, because it's a pie-shaped lot.
Right.
And then with regard to the generator, the original generator was approved in 2019, and it was by the house. You guys did require specs for that. That same generator, and that was roughly 15 feet from the side yard. That same generator was then proposed to be relocated on the approved plan from 2021, which was then 13 feet away. Where the generator is right now, it's 20 feet away. So it's more conforming than this board ever approved.
Right. Understood. Without us really actually knowing that we were at that time approving something that didn't meet the noise ordinance, so.
So can I don't know if it's legally allowed, and I spoke to Dan right before the meeting, if the building department, before they issue their CO, we go out there with a sound level meter to measure the decibels, to make sure that it meets what it's supposed to be, so it's legal.
Both nighttime and daytime.
Yes. Would you consider making that part of a condition?
I'm going to leave that question up to council.
Find it very often the building inspector's office. These issues.
I can't even hear you, John, sorry, can you?
That would be fine. It's often the building inspector that picks up these issues. And if the building inspector is satisfied and meets code requirements, I think that's fine.
Okay.
The modification, I mean, the issue here really is the pyramid piercing, which was approved by the zoning board. There's really no, other issue that really should be concerned to the board. The generator is not going to be approved by the building inspector if it doesn't meet the code requirements.
Right, so my suggestion was to lift out the generator from, this is a CO, I've not done a conditional approval on a certificate of occupancy.
How do we flag that?
Yeah, how do we move this forward?
Your requirements with the variance from the zoning board have been met as far as the building is concerned.
Yes, but not the generator. But not the generator, and my understanding is we can't approve things that don't meet.
But you don't know if it meets code.
That's correct.
So if we provide that letter,
Well, that's why we can't approve it, because we don't know.
So that's what I'm saying, is that it's like, we do conditional approvals for applications, but do we do conditional approvals for certificates of occupancy, where we can say we would recommend this for, we have that little bit we read, right, to say it substantially conforms to the approval, and we make a recommendation that the building department, do the final inspection, but usually we don't do that until we have all our boxes checked, so this is a new one for me.
You don't have any authority or power to vary the noise provisions.
No, I understand, yeah, I understand that, we can't do that, but that's why we usually don't recommend applications for certificate of occupancy if we cannot demonstrate that the generator meets the code. Like, this is.
Well, I guess you can get the letter and then bring it back to the board, but I think.
Although if it meets it,
It's the board's call.
then
It's the building inspector's call as to whether or not you meet code compliance. It's not,
Is it the building inspector or the code enforcer?
it's building inspector.
So, right, but, okay.
Especially the CO, code enforcement doesn't get involved in this.
Right, but, okay. So as a practical matter, we can approve this if they produce a letter that indicates that the generator.
I'm confused also because we have not been doing this, so
Yeah.
that's where I'm getting caught up.
May I say something? We have done as-built COs. Could this be considered the same?
No, that's what we would be doing, except for the generator.
Because so when we do an as-built, we rate comments. So we could possibly write a comment about the generator, or maybe even a cover letter
Well, and also
to Joe Palermo.
if it fails, then the building department can't issue their CO.
Understood.
So we would
Right.
have to come back to you anyway.
Right, yeah, no, I get it. We've just never done this before.
I
you know,
totally get
which
that,
is
and that's why it's
we're
a
all like,
unique situation.
yeah, we're humming.
Right, but
So,
if council thinks that it's fine, then I'm not gonna.
yeah, because I don't have any problem with the pyramid thing. That it's really just the generator that I'm stuck on, because we have not, at least in my, 1.5 years here, haven't recommended that a CO be issued for,
Yeah,
if
we've
we
taken
don't
it
have
out
the
of the-
specs for the generator, if we don't know whether the generator
How
will.
do we not have the specs that we had them in 2019?
You do have them from 2019.
Okay.
We may have them, I'm not certain, I didn't have them in
Okay.
my packet, I don't know if they have
It was from
the
Okay, we don't know if it meets the
noise output.
criteria.
Oh,
All
so
right.
they
none of
haven't been
that.
reviewed, is what you're saying.
So they haven't, yes, that has not been reviewed, right.
Right.
So not even on paper has that been reviewed
Right.
today.
Right.
Um,
Do you have access to that? Again, you could,
So, and they are in the ARB file from 2019.
Right, from the
have
original.
those now?
I can pull them up. Can you?
Oh, that'd be great.
That
That'd
would
be
be
so helpful.
fabulous.
That would give us a landmark.
So we weren't really sure if they. Wait, just want to make sure, what year was the?
It was 2019.
Well, I
The
think
board has consistently, I think, made a mistake. I think
the
that's
board
happening all
wasn't paying attention to the noise ordinance until
No.
recently.
We didn't have planning.
So, okay, that's right.
So there have been a lot of errors.
Which
you know.
would account for part of the problem with prior applications, neighbors that were pandemic approvals, if you will.
Yeah, cross our fingers. Well, you know what? Let's press the pause button on that for a minute while Dan's doing that, and,
And go to the,
yeah.
would you mind?
Maybe,
Yeah.
would you, is that okay with you, Katie? We'll just go on to the next
He
one.
happens to find it.
Yeah. So, Chip is yours?
Yes.
Valerie and Todd Street, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-172-1-22.13. This is Chip's.
So we last dealt with this application at our October 12th meeting. Applicant had deer fencing on both sides of their backyards, which exceeded 7 feet. Property is in a small subdivision across from Wren's Nursery. Before our October 12th meeting, the applicant had reduced the fencing and the post to 7 feet, and I have confirmed this. So this is actually, we actually dealt with this at our last meeting.
Okay.
I believe this application is ready for a C of O and would instruct the building department of the same.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Chip? Okay, you want to make the motion?
Yes, sir.
There's your cheat
Yes.
sheet. Yeah.
I make a
I don't have
motion
mine.
to approve this application for a request for a C of O and instruct staff to notify the building department of the same.
Second, please.
I will vote aye.
Okay.
Oh, you got a second from Diane.
Oh, okay, great, thanks, I didn't hear it. Okay, so we're gonna, how are we doing over there? Still looking?
We're getting close.
Still, we're getting close, great.
You're on a whole file, so we're trying to.
All right, well, I got an easy one too. Victoria and Albert Carey, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-87-3-2.2. That was the gate at that lovely home on Old Montauk Highway. There are pictures, but I'm not going to trouble Dan. They did a nice job. This is the one where it faces the ocean. And we had a problem understanding that the front yard is actually the front yard on the ocean rather than the way it is for the bays and so forth. Yeah, so it's very nice, and the driveway pulls in to the right, so it's actually east facing, so you can't really see it so well from the road anyway. So I think it came out great. It's conforms to the resolution that we passed. Actually,
The resolution?
I do, it's right here. It's a condition of approval, submit an updated survey showing the call box.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Use voting for it, yeah. Okay. You know what? The gates are actually,
The physical copy, like I.
yeah, they are, okay, so they're 5 foot 10. Okay, the pillars are taller. The pillars are at 76 inches.
It's 6 feet.
So it exceeds
Correct.
the,
6 feet, 4 inches.
But it's because the grade is lower there. The grade, the driveway was paved, so the grade drops down a couple of inches. It's all the same height as you look at it. So there's no, it's like when you look at it, it bumps up, but just for the record, it wasn't all that same height. But I feel it substantially conforms. It looks nice, and I think they did a good job. So does anybody have any questions on that?
no.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to instruct staff to notify the building department this applicant has satisfied the conditions of the ARB approval resolution dated,
July 13th.
thank you, July 13th, 2023, and a certificate of occupancy can be issued. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we got that one passed and carried. How's it going over there?
So we can't find them in the file, but I do have a copy of them.
Oh, that works.
Hooray.
And Dan and I went over them. So the daytime, it does meet it. The nighttime, it's slightly higher. But we do have vegetation around the generator.
Yeah, vegetation doesn't baffle noise.
Well,
Yeah.
the idea was if we can get a letter and have a sound level meter read, signed by a licensed professional, an architect or engineer.
That's what we would normally, that's the normal course. That's what we usually ask for before we approve the CO.
Okay.
So it feels cart before the horse to me, and
But so what
But John is
council was
saying we
saying
can do
that we
that.
can leave that to the
Okay,
building
okay.
inspector
All right.
to
Which, and again, if it
address.
doesn't meet,
yeah, you have to, you've got to mitigate that anyway.
There's a notation, yeah, so we need to make that notation on the
All right,
memo to the building department.
okay.
Is what,
Which is basically what Julie was saying,
Yes.
so, yeah, okay.
Yes.
So, all right, so do you
is
want to
me.
make a motion? Yeah.
yes,
and-
this is me. I forgot
Here's
after all
your
that.
cheat sheet.
Oh,
Well, I
Lovely.
wrote it a little differently, but
that's
you'll
fine.
figure it out.
Okay, so I make a motion to instruct staff to notify the building department that this applicant has satisfied the conditions and substantially conforms the ARB approval of the resolution dated March 2nd, 2021. And a certificate of occupancy can be issued on the condition of findings that the generator meets both daytime and nighttime
Noise code.
noise code. Noise ordinance.
Okay, may I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Voila.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Katie.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for working with us on that, Katie. All right, so now this evening we are signing, did everyone sign who's meant to sign?
Well,
Do we have some resolutions that need some remedy?
yes, I think so. And I did
Okay.
separate that out.
Can you tell me which ones they are?
Well, this, I wasn't sure, the Reuben residence, I thought he had said he was having these special homemade fixtures, so I wasn't sure where that came from. So I'm
I
just,
don't know.
Which one? What is?
Reuben?
Ruben?
It's in the, application packet.
but he had other lighting also. That's why I'm just confused by that. Remember,
Whose
he had,
application was it?
he was that,
Approval, and they're built by existing.
exactly,
Oh, there were squares in
Yeah,
the
there
soffit.
yes.
Yeah.
You want that on there, soffit?
Well, they weren't in the soffit, were
Yeah,
they?
They were soffit lighting.
Well, usually we have everything, that's why I was asking, but this is fine, okay.
Okay.
If everybody agrees that that's fine, then that's fine. I just wanted to, on both Sylvan and Gardner's Marina, the maximum height is indicated as, on Gardner's, it's height of elevation 39 feet 9 inches. And I recall Frank saying something to you about the elevation, but we can't have a house that's 39 I mean, a structure.
That's the thing.
Right.
Well, that's
he
fine,
does
but-
everything from mean sea level, which is not how that's
not
the
how it would
code
be
is written.
recorded here.
It's from grade.
You did have the elevation.
Right, but we don't have that in the, so
Yeah,
this goes to
I
the
don't think it-
building department. We have not done that. This is the first time we've done that, but that's a predilection he has as an architect, which is fine, but it's not the criteria we have used traditionally, so we need that to be remedied.
Right. And then also just the exterior lighting, I'm not sure if there was an error here with number 1 ID, if that was meant to be 1B, just, I don't know. Anyway, I think we already
Okay.
think that this has to be revised, so
Yeah, I think so. I'm sorry about that,
sorry about
too.
that.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to it on the 30th then, I guess.
Okay, and then just for the 676 Springs Fireplace Road, a 6-foot-high wood fence left untreated to color naturally.
We don't know what kind of
what
wood
does-
it is,
What
yeah.
does that,
Do we
is that
have
to
that?
weather
Do we know what that
naturally, or
is?
what does that mean?
To weather naturally, yeah. It's a stockade fence, isn't it?
So
No,
is,
it was not stockade, it was,
Oh, the board, it's the
Yeah,
plank board.
yeah.
It's the same thing, kind of.
is it oak, or what is it made of?
it's not cedar?
Cedar or
It's cedar?
pine. It's cedar or pine.
I just was questioning the color naturally part. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if
I
that's,
think it's to weather naturally.
Okay.
It's untreated.
So why don't we just cross out color and write to weather naturally, because I think that would suffice without knowing exactly what the,
How come we're doing these revisions at this meeting?
well, it
because
just,
I didn't see these.
yeah, she didn't get a chance to look at these. Okay,
Well,
it's better they're correct.
it's better that
Let's just
they're
take
not,
5
we're not going to
minutes, yeah.
incur a confusion when it
All
comes
right,
back
let's
to
see,
us at
where
any
are we
time.
here? 767, I need Ruben.
So can you sign Gardner's and
Every-
the front page?
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine.
That's our plan. Yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah, you need to sign up. Is there another edit that you wanted to mention?
Well, the Sylvan one has the same elevation issue.
Right,
I
same elevation issue on
And I
Sylvan
haven't signed
Realty.
that, so-
Okay, all right. All right, but the rest of them are okay?
Yeah,
All right, so I'm going to read all these in, and we'll just make the edits to the first page, because we know they're basically administrative, they're not substantive. Okay. All right, so tonight we're signing resolutions for Rowdy Hall, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-171-1-14, 676 Fireplace Road, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-80-6-19.1, Sylvan Realty, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-161-4-9, Gardner's Marina, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-93-1-8, Mallow Jones, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-80-1-6.4, Roland Ryan Davis, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-63-2-14.5, Reuben Residence, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-197-8-7. Then we have 4 extensions of time for Nidec, am I pronouncing that correctly? Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-200-3-41.5, which includes an extension of time from 2/28/2019, 7/11/2019, 11/8/2018, and 10/9/2012, and then Nidec Agricultural Overlay Resolution, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-3-41.5. Well, that was a mouthful. Okay. I think that's it for us, friends and family. And I wish you all a happy Veterans Day weekend, and thank a veteran. Put your flag up. I'll entertain a motion to close the meeting.
I make a motion to close this meeting.
Have a second, please? All in favor?